Everybody, welcome to the Designs Tech Center and to the 2025 Utah Assistive Technology Teams Conference. We're grateful that all of you are here with us today to be able to celebrate the UATT Team Day. We'd like to be able to acknowledge all of the efforts and energies from UATT Central to be able to put this together for us. We're grateful for Kent Rumand, Austin Oseguera, Julia Pierce, and Susanna Aguinaga. Also like to be able to acknowledge all those who are serving here on the leadership to be able to make this possible for us. We have 6 different representatives across the different regions. And I'd like to be able to acknowledge Angela Durant from Washington District, Tasha Lewis from Nebo, Becca Powell from Murray District, Marcy Mitchell from Summit, and Jason Udi from Box Elder District. Also need to acknowledge all the efforts and energies from those on Leadership Council who just came off of council this last year, as they helped put our Star Wars theme together really for us. And that includes Jody Lynn Beck from North San Pete, Stephen Duke from San Juan District, Chris Ann Lewis from Spectrum Academy, and Robert Woodbury from Cache. So thank you guys all for your efforts and energies to bring this together. If you put your hands together just to acknowledge some sense of gratitude for all the efforts and energies, be greatly appreciated. Also like to be able to recognize you guys as professionals and individuals for all of your efforts and energies to have our assistive technology teams work together. Really, if it wasn't for you, there would be no team. And so we're thankful for all your efforts and energies. Some of you have dedicated time out of your schedules to be able to do the assistive technology. You all should realize that not all may, but so we're thankful for your efforts and your dedication to be able to help out on these AT teams. We were trying to figure out how many years, on average, we have with the experience between all of ourselves. And we really have no idea. The data's never been kept. So we do have some small tokens of appreciation for all your efforts and energies for serving on these UATT teams. So just out of curiosity, if you have more than 20 years of experience within the UATT project, would you please stand? Anybody can be right? Awesome, fantastic. We're gonna come on over. You could be the first pick out of our allotment of printed things over here. So, anybody else with 20 years or more experience with that? I'm eventually going to get to y'all. So, how about the 10 years to 19 years of service in the UATT project? Go ahead and stand up if you're within that. Awesome. You guys can come up as well and grab an item out of from the things that we have here. These are items that were 3D printed at UATT Central over the last couple of months. So some fun different Star Wars themed items for you. Okay, our next group would be those who have between 5 and 9 years serving in the UATT project. Go ahead and stand up. Yay. We thought about doing certificates for everybody, to acknowledge all their time, but we thought maybe some swag would be more fun than a piece of paper. This is probably our bigger group, but those with 3 to 5 years of experience. If you're part of that 3 to 5 years group, please come on up. And then lastly, all those who are still out there willing to serve, you can come up as well and get some free swag. I'm going to turn the time over to Angela, and she's going to get us going with an icebreaker. And then I'll turn the time over to Austin after that to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Paige. Thanks.
Yeah. around, or do I have to be up here?
You can move around.
Okay. Getting my PowerPoint out.
I'm getting it. I had it open. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Is it presenting up there? Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
It is. Okay.
Yep, and so you turn that on, you should be live to the room.
All right. Once these people get their things, we're going to do a little get to know you game. My name is Angela Durant. I am a speech language pathologist, and I live in St. George. So I was really trepidatious about coming up to Salt Lake today because I don't like the cold anymore. So luckily, it's a nice day. So when you get back, I have some people handing out a sticky note. Everyone needs a pen and a little piece of paper. All right, so we'll give these guys a couple more minutes. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So on your paper, there's a whole series of things. If you have not done the thing that's on here, put a mark on your paper. So let's see. Okay, you have never been to a wedding. So if you've never been to a wedding, you're going to put a mark on your paper. You've never been to Disneyland or Disney World, put a mark on your paper. If you've never skipped school, what else? If you've never been to Hawaii, put a mark on your paper. If you've never been to Las Vegas, if you've never been to Texas, Mexico, or Canada, put a mark on your paper, or the Bahamas. Okay, and I did this with our speech team in St. George. So we live like 2 hours away from the Grand Canyon, and there's so many people who've never even been there. So if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, put a mark on your paper. And if you've never been on a ferry boat ride, if you've never flown in a helicopter, put a mark on your paper. If you've never been to California or New York, if you have never played in a school band or orchestra, put a mark on your paper. If you've never sang in the school choir or sang karaoke, put a mark on your paper. Those are two different ones. If you've never had a pet, I'm really sorry that your mom was so mean. So put a mark on your paper. If you've never been skiing or snowboarding, and we had this question, we're like, if it's cross-country skiing, we're not going to count that. It has to be downhill because of the mountains. If you've never ridden a horse, been to the hospital overnight, been in the hospital overnight, or you've never donated blood or plasma, put a mark on your paper. There's a few more on the next page, and then we'll get to the fun part. Okay, if you've never gotten a speeding ticket, put a mark. I've never gotten a speeding ticket, so it drives my husband crazy. If you've never been to a drive-in movie, and for some of you guys who were really young, they used to have these things where there's a great big screen and you drive your car and watch a movie. Because I know some of you guys are were probably born in 2000 or later. If you've never gotten a tattoo or a body piercing, if you've never broken a bone, if you've never gotten stitches or staples, put a mark. If you've never had a surgery, if you've never been ziplining or swam in the ocean, you've never taken a hot air balloon ride, never shot a gun, you've never traveled alone. So if you went on a business trip alone, that doesn't matter. It has to be for pleasure by yourself. Never driven a stick shift vehicle. And if you have to ask what that is, you've never driven one. You've never used Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or TikTok. If you've never been to a funeral, never been to Europe, Asia, or Africa. Okay, so now I want you to count up how many marks you have. And I have a prize for the person who has done the most things, which means they have the fewest marks on their paper, and then the person who has done nothing. That means they have a whole bunch of marks on their paper. So, who has more than 20 marks in their paper? Anybody? Did you count them up? Wait, you more than 20 marks. So you haven't done 20 of these things. So some people are adding up. All right. How many, does anybody have one mark on their paper? Everybody? There's something that everybody has not done on that list. Okay. Who has two? Who has one? No. Raise your hand if you have one mark. Raise your hand. You just have one? No. If you only have one mark on your paper, raise your hand. If you have two, raise your hand. Wow. If you have three, raise your hand. No one is going to be, come on, guys. 4? What? Garrett's being quick. Do you have 5 marks on your paper? Okay. All right. Well, I only got one treat, and there was like 5 of you guys. So let's say who's the oldest person that has the 5 marks? That means they have done they've been the least adventurous. You have 47. Anybody beat 47? I thought you were going to be like 20. You're so young. Yeah, she does. I'm like, there's no way you're that old. Okay. Yes, how? Oh, she beat, yeah. So, okay. So that means you have done the most things in your life. And so you've been really, so where have you been? Have you been to all of those places?
Africa. Haven't been to Africa, but I've been.
What other things didn't you have on that list?
I never skipped school.
She never skipped school. She's such a good girl. Anything else? Okay. All right. So now, does anybody have more than 20 on their paper? How about more than 10? Raise your hand if you have more than 10. Okay. What about more than 15? Okay. 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. So over here we have 4 people with 5. So I guess this means that you guys have done nothing in your life, right? You need to be a little bit more adventurous. So we're going to take the oldest person in this group too to see who's the oldest person in this group. 48, anybody beat that? Okay, she's going to get it. So we just hope that we have a really good time, get to know people, and have fun at the conference. I know the first time I came to the UATT conference, I learned so much, and I was so grateful for all of the knowledge I learned. So hopefully we will have a great conference. So are you up, Austin?
Thank you. Good. Oh, hey, thank you. You have a quick.
Oh.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Just a couple housekeeping items. So we do have bathrooms. They're down this hallway on this side if we need to go. So down that hallway is where the restrooms are if you need those. Also, as far as for UATT stuff, orders are coming due. So hopefully by the beginning of April, if you haven't been ordering, we can get our orders in. That gives us time to get items ordered and get them to you. there will be an email coming out in regards to that. We do have some team equipment that is here. So if you have team equipment that you have ordered, it's probably here for you. So you're welcome to pick that up. Also, for each individual team, we've purchased these Bluetooth Death Star speakers, and we do have those up here, so each team can pick one of those up. What we do want to see is some people trying some assistive technology with that and involving your students in your classroom. And we'd love to see, some videos of kind of what you're doing and maybe some ideas that you're creating with this. So a cool option. Hopefully we'll get some good things from people. So let's see what other UAT stuff. I don't know that there's much, and I don't know that we're going to pend keeping Paige off for much longer. Anything else, team, that we have for UAT? Guess not. All right, so we'll maybe get things kicked off a little bit early and get Paige going. So I will introduce Paige and let her tell you more about herself as we get things going. So come on up.
That was going to happen. All right, can you guys hear me? Okay. I may need it, so yeah. Okay, so while I'm struggling with my cane, hi. I'm Paige Buckingham, and I want to thank you guys for having me here in Utah. I am from Kansas, and I actually live in Lawrence, Kansas, which is not really a suburb of Kansas City because we're not really connected. There's about 30 minutes where there's just kind of farmland in between us and Kansas City. And then after us, you get Kansas. And so while you all have these beautiful mountains, we have the beauty of what we call the Flint Hills. And it has been scientifically shown that Kansas is flatter than a pancake. So if you ever get a chance to drive through the Flint Hills, it has its own beauty to it, just like the mountains do. Even though it's very flat, it is amazing because very few things grow on it because it is rock, kind of like the mountains, but it is great for grazing and cattle and everything. So I had a picture of the mountains up there from Colorado, but I changed to a sunset in Kansas from this summer. So that is a beautiful Kansas, western Kansas sunset from this past year when I was working with a colleague and went to western Kansas to stay with her. So I wanted to share that. All right, let me get this up and going. Let's see. Okay. Are we good on sound? Okay, awesome. All right, so as I was struggling with my cane, I had a hip replacement 2 months ago, so that's why I'm sometimes with a cane and sometimes without it. And also during that hip replacement, my femur was fractured, which I didn't know was a thing, but found out when I came out of surgery was a thing. And so I was 6 weeks non-weight bearing. So I'm just about 3 weeks weight bearing. So that's why you might see me sometimes grab the cane, sometimes sit on the stool. And as I was talking to the physical therapist about it, I said, oh, this is assistive technology, right? We use it when we need it. Sometimes we need it, sometimes we don't. It's up to the individual whether they're going to use it or not, right? And I can make that determination. So you'll see me with it sometimes when I'm walking distances. When I was in the airport the other day, when we were in Park City yesterday, and I'm walking up and down the street with my cane, but just up here on stage, hopefully I will be okay. So anyway, so I apologize about struggling with that because it's still something kind of new to me. So my background, So today we're going to talk about assistive technology or executive functioning skills and AAC connections. And I am a speech pathologist by training. I was in the public schools for 32 years and I retired at the end of the 2022 school year. So I did live through COVID. I had to jump in, provide speech services within a school, help everyone get the technology set up, the connections, the how do we get every single subscription that we need so that the therapists can do their thing. So I did all that. I lived through that with all of you who did it, which was, how many of us are just so glad we're not in that anymore, right? You know, not in the how are we going to do this situation. So when I retired, I had been doing presentations for a few years for an organization called Infinitec. And so when I retired, I decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do educational consulting. So I started my own business and started doing educational consulting. And through that, I was doing some different things in Kansas and in Illinois and presenting at Closing the Gap and ATIA and those different things. And then Infinitec, which is the organization I work with, it's kind of like, you call it UATT. It's kind of like UATT within the state of Kansas. And so I work for them part-time. So I do 25 hours a week with them, and then I do consulting for the rest of the time. And so I believe how this came about is Julia attended a session I did, Closing the Gap webinar, last like May, and reached out to me and asked if I would come present. So this has been in the works for a while. So this has been exciting that it's actually happened. So my company is Buckingham Educational Services and Training. So my financial disclosures are that, and then I am the lead assistive technologies facilitator for Kansas Infinitec. Infinitec is based out of Illinois. There's an Illinois Infinitec, a Kansas, a California, and a Minnesota, and maybe a North Carolina, I'm not sure. But what we do with Infinitec is we provide training and assistance within the state we're in. The project I'm on is actually part of a grant through our Department of Education. So you'll hear me talk a little bit about that. So in Kansas, I lead assistive technology teams within counties, communities, districts, and everything to help them have sustainable AT services. So there's my email information. If you want to send me an email, you're welcome to do that. I also have a website, and I'm going to show you some information on that. So if there's anything I share with you today, any links or anything, they are going to be on the website. I know that Austin put a lot of the things on the sched for you, but I have made sure all of them are linked there. So my personal information, like I said, I'm a retired educator. I am married and have been married for 33 years. My husband was with me this weekend here in Utah. We came in on Saturday night because I wanted to prep just in case there was snow. So last week in Kansas, we had temperatures like minus 10 degrees and school was canceled for like 3 days. And we've had more snow this year than we've had in a very long time. So as we were planning this, I was like, ooh, I want to plan just in case we have bad weather. So we came in on Saturday, we did Park City yesterday and went to the Capitol and drove around and did for him a 24-hour tour of Salt Lake City and have just loved it. We're both like, oh gosh, this is gorgeous here. So if any of you who live in the area, we've really appreciated it. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. I also have a YouTube channel and an Instagram page that you can go to that I will have some different information. My husband and I have 2 children. Our children are grown. Our son and daughter are both married, and we have no grandchildren. We just have grand fluffs. We have a dog and a kitty. So that's kind of our personal stuff. So I do want to show you my website real quick, just so you know what it is you would be going to. So let me find this. So if you go to my website and go here to resources, there's a lot of different things on here, and these are just like links to them. But if you go to the Utah Assistive Technology Teams Conference and click on it, it is password protected, and the password is Utah. Okay, no big secret, capital U, Utah. So everything for this week or for these next couple of days, so everything I talk about here today, here's the slides. If you want those like in a PDF, I have an AAC tool planning piece, a bunch of different executive function checklists. For tomorrow are here are the slides for Tuesday afternoon. So all that information is on there and you can access it. But on pages that aren't password protected, there's still links to most of these things, okay? It's really just the slides. So there's a bunch of different checklists. I have different graphics. I have links to web pages and all those different kinds of things. I also do some blogs that talk about executive functioning skills. So if you're trying to teach somebody this and you're like, hey, I want to send them something quick, go to that. You can send them that blog. They're really, really short and just kind of give information on different areas. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you can share it with other people or use it as, there we go, as you need to. Okay, so that is the website. All right, so here are the official, objectives for the day. So we are going to focus on what are the connections between language development and executive functioning skills, employing purposeful executive function, skill teaching when we're using an AAC system, and to prepare vocabulary to target different executive function skills. And I think I'm getting sound from this, or is it mine? Oh, no, it was mine, sorry. I just heard feedback. Okay, so those are the official ones. So to turn in to the state saying these are the objectives we did, but these are the real objectives, okay? That you will learn something new, that you will think differently about something you already know. Very little of what I'm telling you today is going to be rocket science. It's going to be new where you're like, oh, I've never heard that before. A lot of it is just going to be changing what you are thinking of, or what you know, and thinking about it in a different way, or maybe making a connection in a different way, that you'll reevaluate what you're doing and do it differently if you think that's the right thing to do, that you will expand your learning and that you'll make a new friend, right? Maybe there are people in the state that you've only ever seen on a video call. Like I had the opportunity to meet Julia at Closing the Gap, but I had never had the opportunity to actually meet Austin, although we've been on calls many, many times. And when we met each other, we're like, is it a handshake? Is it a hug? How do we go about this? So hopefully you'll meet somebody that you have seen before, be able to talk to them in person, make connections, or just connect with somebody that you haven't ever met before. But the most important thing is that the next time you're working with students, you will take one piece of information from today and use it. That is always my goal. I don't want anything ever to be that you have to go and relearn something, prepare something, do all this, because again, I get it. I was in education for 32 years. There is not time, right? There is not time to do it. So the goal is that you can just take it and go with it. So I wasn't sure what our format was going to be today, and I know we have a few people online. And so what I'm going to have you do, and some of you have this on a piece of paper. So again, I didn't know how easy it was going to be to get these QR codes. So this is a Padlet. And what I would like you to do is go into the Padlet. If you have the piece of paper, there you can pass them around. I printed those off just in case the QR code was too hard to get. But if you go to that QR code and you would answer, let me pull up my website. See, I'm old enough that I need my glasses sometimes. All right, so let me pull that Padlet up. Okay, so, ooh, good. Who's your favorite celebrity? What's your favorite food? Did I ask that question? Did somebody else ask that question? Okay, I don't know why that's on there. So I apologize. I did not say who's your favorite celebrity or what's your favorite food. I'm glad to know that. But maybe it's just because I picked the what's about us that always, you don't have to tell me who your favorite celebrity is. I'm sorry. I didn't realize those were questions. See, this is why you should always double check these things. So what I want to know is, who are you? What's your role? Are you a speech path? Are you an OT? Are you a PT? Let me see real quick. Oh my gosh, Does it let you do anything else? Let me see real quick. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. Sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Tell me your favorite food or your favorite actor. Okay. Sure. Let's do that. If you want to stick what area you are. So let me ask this. Where are my speech paths? Woohoo, speechies. All right, here we are. Are speech paths as hard to find in Utah as they are in Kansas? Yeah. OTs. Okay, great. PTs. Awesome. PTs. Hey, I've been living with not living with the PT, but doing a lot of physical therapy lately. Any vision specialists? Hearing? Excellent. Adaptive PE. Do you have adaptive PT in Utah? Yep. Any school psychologists? Social workers? Administrators? Special ed teachers? There's my other group. Okay. General ed teachers? Anybody I didn't ask about? Okay, great. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I guess I just took the one that was like about us. So there we go. I learned I need to create something different in the future for that. So excellent, wonderful. Let's see. Somebody lives in a town of 100. Ooh, that's interesting. What's a fun fact about you? SLP. Okay, great, wonderful. Okay. So I will tell you, I do have a lot of QR codes today. And again, I wasn't sure what the setup was going to be, so I defaulted to QR codes. So we're going to be doing a lot of things with that. As we start getting into this, I want to talk about executive function skills and why this is important for students with more significant needs. First of all, how many of you work mostly with students that you would consider students with more significant needs? A lot of you. Okay. How many of you work mostly with students that we would call high incidence, more learning disability students? A few of you. Okay, great. Well, we're going to be focusing on the population of students with complex communication needs, but that doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to some of our other students. So why are executive function skills important to this population? Well, the reason it's important is because we want people to be independent, right? We want to reduce care from other people. We want to reduce para support, caregiver support, parent support, because when you rely on that, when you become older and you're 25, it makes it harder to be independent, right? So we want to work on doing that. We want to increase self-confidence. When you are able to do something by yourself, you are more confident in what you're doing. We want to increase independence in living, in working, in relationships. How many of you have watched any of the Love on the Spectrum shows? Yeah, they're really eye-opening and really good. Think about that. One of the shows had an individual, I think his name was Michael, and I think it was the Australia one. Has anyone watched the Australia one? Yeah. So I think it was Michael. And he talked about, so for those of you who haven't seen the show, I think it's on Netflix, there's a Love on the Spectrum with adults who have autism, and then Down on Love or Down for Love with people who have Down syndrome. And they're all adults and want to have relationships. And so this individual has autism, and he seems like the sweetest, kindest, most caring person. And he talked about how when he was younger, he had a lot of behavior issues until he learned about dinosaurs. And when he learned about dinosaurs, he became very interested in dinosaurs and started expanding his vocabulary about dinosaurs and expanding his other vocabulary. And that is what helped him learn how to speak. Well, because of that, he is now independent enough that he drives, he has a job. I think he might live on his own, or at least like with somebody else, but I don't think he lives with his family. And he's wanting to have a relationship, and he has every right to have a relationship. So that's what we want to do, is we want to make sure that individuals that we work with have the ability to have those relationships. I always tell people, think of that the student you're working with at age 25. And what does their life look like? Where are they living? Where are they working? What relationships are they having? And what do you need to do now to make that trajectory happen? If the individual wants to live by themselves, wants to have a relationship, have a partner, or be married, whatever, have a family, wants to have an independent job, are we doing the things to help them gain that and be able to have that to the best of their ability? So I always tell people, think of that person at 25. And executive function skills are the skills that allow you to keep jobs, okay? All of you keep your jobs because you have executive function skills, right? You show up on time, you have your paperwork done close to the time that it needs to be done, right? You follow the rules, you do what you're supposed to do, and all of those things are executive function skills. And you can hire somebody who doesn't have the skill set maybe and teach them a skill set, but what is really hard to teach people are the skills or the soft skills that we think of to keep a job. Being on time, getting along with other people, having emotional control, response inhibition. So those are the things that executive function skills do. When we're defining executive function skills are the conscious control of what we think, do, and say. And it is what we do to regulate our own emotions when something doesn't go the way we want it to, right? Did anybody have any difficulty at all in their morning before they got here? You don't have to say what it is. Anybody have anything? Car wouldn't start, kids were having, yeah, but you guys still got here, right? Maybe you had to stop and get an extra coffee or an extra this or an extra that to regulate. Maybe you had to turn on music or turn off music, but you were able to regulate and get here and not have a total meltdown and be able to say, I just can't do it, right? You used your executive function skills through that. It allows us to coordinate goal setting, control our attention and focus. And we are all, everybody, every human is born with the potential to use executive function skills, but it's based on our experiences. Okay, a Harvard study calls it the air traffic control system of our brain. And we all have the potential to gain executive function skills, but we do that based on experiences that we have. I did want to say, feel free to take a picture of any slide. I typically don't give handouts of my slides because when I retired, I threw a lot of those away and never looked at them again, right? And wasted a lot of paper. So what I do is tell people, take a picture, because if you take a picture, you're going to engage with this at least twice. Once when you take the picture and it's meaningful to you, and once when you either decide to delete it or you look at it again and decide to do something with it. So feel free to take pictures, whatever you want to do. Okay, things to know about executive function skills. So things to know with executive function skills are that the students and children who benefit the most from executive function skills training are the ones with the lowest executive function skills, okay? So it is important for us to have a focus on executive function skills. Also, executive function demands need to increase in order for you to continually ramp them up. Kind of like when I started walking. So I was 6 weeks not walking, just using a walker, toe touch only, and then literally went to the doctor, and he's like, okay, weight bearing as much as you want to. And so what did I do? I took a step, and physical therapist, what happened to me when I took a step? I went, woo. Okay, I was like Bambi, right? Because I hadn't used my leg except for like this in 6 weeks. And I took a step and it was like I was Bambi. So I had to gradually work up. I did have to use a walker for a few days. I did have to use a cane for a while because I couldn't just go there. But the more I did it, the more that strengthened and increased. So executive function skills are the same. If we just do them once or twice and then go, we taught them, not going to happen. We have to continually, incrementally increase these. Also, repeated practice is the key. If you just do it once or twice, you're not going to get it. And executive function skills are trainable and can be improved at any age. Are there any of you who feel you have an executive function weakness? You can do that. Okay. They're trainable and you can improve them at any age, right? So you can say, okay, I'm really going to work on my time management and this is what I'm going to do. And these are the strategies I'm going to put in place. And the earlier we do this, who are the early childhood people? Or do we have early, be proud, early childhood people. You guys are laying the foundation for this. You are laying the foundation for executive functioning skills. And the earlier we start these, the more independent and lifelong achievement that individuals will have. Okay, so a lot of time, when I do this as a full day training, I have people actually do an executive function checklist thinking about a student. But I knew I wouldn't have quite enough time. But there are links on the website and links if you go into the PDF for different executive function skills checklists. So there's one that I created, and it just looks at 4 skills. It looks at response inhibition, emotional control, working memory, and I think sustained attention. And then here's some other ones that are free. So if you do an executive functioning checklist, it is an assessment. At least in the state of Kansas, we don't have to have permission for assessments. It's just information we're gathering. It's not an evaluation. It is just information that we're gathering. So all 3 of these, the EF Works library from Executive Function Skills is really good. Attitude and bilinguistics. Bilinguistics is a speech pathology website typically for bilingual services, but it has a really, really great checklist. So any of those will work. What I do with these checklists is I will fill them out for students and use that information. Everybody is going to have strengths in executive function and weaknesses. And what these checklists do is they kind of say, well, this is what it gives you a number, and this is what your number is, but it doesn't say if it's good or bad. It's just like, this is your number. So what you want to look at is, what are the 2 or 3 areas that are highest, so the strengths for that person, and what are the 2 or 3 areas that are lowest and are the weaknesses for that person. Again, if I had you all do one of these, everybody would have areas that were strengths and everyone would have areas that were weaknesses. So use the strengths to inform the weaknesses. All right, so as you do those with students, that's what we want to do. So that's a brief overview of executive functioning. Is there anybody who has any questions about what we've talked about so far? Is this pretty much, your guys are all like, yeah, we did this in undergrad in my education class, right? We talked about executive function skills. A lot of times what I hear people say is they're like, yeah, we've talked about this, but I've never really thought about them. I've never really thought about what we need to do and how we need to do it. So tomorrow at the keynote, we will be talking about the impact of executive functioning skills on behaviors and how a lot of the behaviors we are seeing in schools right now are related to executive function weaknesses. Again, I don't know if Utah's like Kansas. I'm assuming it is because I know in Illinois and in Oregon and in Minnesota and places I've talked to people, they're all like, yeah, we are having a lot of behavior issues in schools and not just kids on IEPs. Is that safe to say for Utah also? Yeah. Okay, so that we'll really dive into that tomorrow. So today we're going to talk about language and communication related to this. So things we know about language. So SLPs, you can kind of zone out for a minute, or you can turn to your neighbor and help them with this. But so we learn languages by first hearing or being exposed to it receptively. How many of you speak a second language? Okay. And you learned it through a book, right? No. How did you learn it? Struggling a lot, right? Okay. Were you in another country? Dated somebody from Argentina. Okay, that's a story for later, right? Anybody else know another language? Just being immersed in it. There you go. There you go. Being immersed in it. Yeah. So my language, my second language that I know is sign language. And in grad school, I took 2 one-hour classes on sign language. And then my first job was at a school for the deaf because I thought I knew sign language. Yes, who chuckled? Who chuckled here? Okay. Because did I know sign language? No, I knew a bunch of words, right? And so I took 2 one-hour classes, knew a bunch of words. I took a job in inner city Houston. Okay, if any of you know anything about the Houston School District, the state took over the Houston School District this last year. Okay, I worked there over 30 years ago, so it was a long time ago. But I worked in a regional day school for the Houston School District in inner city schools. I mean, like before shootings and things were a thing, we had SWAT stuff going over the building because there were people armed. So it was an environment in which I always tell people, I was too young and naive to get that may have been a dangerous situation. It was the best experience I ever had in my life because it made me realize that everybody's life was not like mine. But it was also one that as an older adult, I'm like going, ooh, I don't know that I would want my child to do that, because it was really, there were times, I mean, we were sold mace to carry in the school, just in case. So anyway, but it was a fabulous experience, and I had the opportunity to go from knowing a few words to becoming fluent enough in sign language that I dreamed in sign language, okay? Because I was immersed in sign language 5 hours a day, at least 5 days a week. So that's what we know about language. We have to be exposed to it in order to know it. We also cannot speak a language we cannot hear. I was born in the United States. I only, besides sign language, know English. If I had been born in Czechoslovakia, I would know that language. We are born with the potential to learn any language, but we have to be exposed to it in order to learn it. And then the more exposure we have, and I apologize, I thought I changed this. I spelled immersion wrong, so if you're going, Paige, that's spelled wrong, you're right, I know that, and it didn't get changed on this. And then we fix our errors when we accept, when others who know the language accept it and give it back to us correctly, right? So when I was learning sign language, I, again, thought I knew what I was doing, and I signed something to one of the students, and he looked at me and went, and I was like, oh, and he signed it back to me, and then I said, what did I sign? And he was like, and I found out I had just signed a curse word to a student because I thought I knew the sign, but I didn't, and he was like, yeah, you signed the wrong word. But when he accepted it and gave it back to me correctly, I then learned, oh, that's the right way we say it. But what happens so often with our AAC users? Has anybody ever heard this? They didn't really mean to say that. They just mishit. Yep, that's not what they meant. They don't really want that. Have you ever said that to a verbal child? No. Have you ever heard somebody have a young child, again, think of a 3-year-old, come up and say, dookie? They misspoke. They don't get the cookie. That's not what they meant to say. That was wrong. They don't really want the cookie. They want pretzels. I know. No, we go, oh, you want a cookie? Okay, and we give it to them, right? We give it back to them in the correct form, and we accept what they gave us. So that's what we want to do with our AAC users, people who use devices, is accept what they give us, assume and presume competence, and then model it back to them and give them what they need and extend on it. So this is what we know about language. These are 11 skills that toddlers master before words emerge. So this is from a book or a website, Teach Me to Talk. And so we have reacts to events in the environment, responds to people when they talk or play with them, plays with a variety of toys, vocalizes and makes sounds purposefully, initiates. So what language is used in these situations? If this is before words emerge, what are kids doing to do these 11 things? I'm sorry, it's kind of loud over there. Nonverbal communication, right? Triadic eye gaze, looking at you and then looking at the cookie and looking back, right? Doing those kinds of things. What does that look like in an AAC user or somebody who doesn't have communication? What do those nonverbal things look like? And do we have a second microphone? Can we, so that we can hear people as they talk? We're going to have Phil Donahue this. That's kind of aging me.
Well, I feel like a lot of them can be the same up front, but then they would need more gestures and other things usually if they're not speaking yet.
Yeah, so a lot of times the same, right? What else do we see? Behaviors, right? Right? We see behaviors happen. And so a lot of times we see behaviors happen, but we also see a lot of these things happen and people often don't accept them or acknowledge them to be signs of communication, right? If a student looked at you and then looked over there and looked back, say Austin had a cookie right there and they looked at you and then they looked at the cookie and then they looked back at you. A lot of times people wouldn't acknowledge that the student was requesting a cookie, right? But if they were a young child with no anticipated communication things, they would go, oh, they looked at that. Or if the student pointed, or if the student grabbed your hand, you know, if a student grabs somebody's hand and starts pulling them someplace, people are like, oh, their behaviors, we need to get this under control. Well, no, they're probably taking you someplace because they don't have the language to do it. So these are things we're going to see in individuals before words emerge. And executive function ability is directly linked to language ability. And we're going to talk a lot more about this as we get going on today. So, but in order to develop executive function skills, you have to have the language to go with it, whether it's receptively understanding it, expressively using it. And here's the example. In order for me to follow multi-step directions, what do I have to understand? Words. What kinds of words? I'm sorry. Concepts, first, then, prepositions, action words, right? Sorry, I don't know how we're gonna do this. Yeah, sorry. We need roller skates for going up and down the aisle. Okay, but we need those kinds of words because if I don't understand first and last and next and those kinds of things, I'm not gonna be able to follow that direction. At one point, my husband played softball many, many years ago, it was before we even had kids, and somebody hit a ball home run over the fence and it went onto a field or something. That had happened a couple of times. And one of the moms turned to their 5-year-old, 6-year-old and said, "Can you go over there and get the ball?" That was all she said. What do you think happened? What do you think happened? All she said was, "Go get the ball." Did they bring it back? No, they went over and played with it. And she was like, "They're just over there playing with it. I don't know why you didn't bring it back." And I said, "You didn't tell him to, right? You just told him to go get it." And he did, and he's 5. And so he's like, "I'm going to play with this for a while." Eventually he would have brought the ball back, but that was the thing. If she had said, "Go get it and bring it back," those would have been more clear directions. And he had the language to go with that. So we increase our executive function ability as we increase our language ability. And as we know, expressive and receptive language are going to develop differently, right? Some receptive language may be higher or lower, and they kind of, don't always go in tandem. And we want to make sure that we are aware of what those languages look like. Okay. So these are principles for improving executive function skills. To teach to the deficit skill. So when somebody has an executive function skill deficit, we want to treat it just like we would a reading, math, some other kind of language disability. We're going to teach to the skill. So where are my special ed teachers again? Okay, if you have a child that somebody says he's having difficulty reading, what are some questions you ask? And if you can be loud. Yeah, if somebody says, this child has difficulty reading, what are some questions you're going to want to know? What area? Okay, because reading is big, right? What area? Give me some more you're going to say, give me more information than reading, right? Are we talking comprehension? Are we talking, again, I'm a speech path. Are we talking decoding? Are we talking phonics, I mean, all those different kinds of things. Same thing with executive function skills. This is why you're going to want to do a checklist of some kind or delve in and kind of go, okay, what are we seeing that this student is having difficulty with? Because if we just say executive functioning skills, well, there's been 33 different executive function skills identified in the research. And so unlike reading or language, there is no core, this is what they are. Depending on which author you read, some people say there's 3 executive function skills, some people say 11. And Russell Barkley does, I'm really a geek when it comes to this stuff. In fact, this morning I was reading a document from the Federal Department of Education on inclusion. That was my excitement this morning because I love those kinds of things. But so I like reading meta-analysis studies of executive functioning skills. And Russell Barkley did one, and that's where he found in the research there's 33 different executive function skills discovered. So as you're looking at it, you need more information than just there's executive function issues. And you want to teach the deficit skill. So if it's a deficit in response inhibition, if it's a deficit in time management, if it's a deficit in organization, whatever it is, you want to teach to that skill. And then you have to teach or consider that person's developmental level, right? If you have a student who is 10 years old, but is functioning developmentally at age 3, then we can't expect them to have the executive function skills of a 10-year-old. We're going to expect those of a 3-year-old, but still we're going to work on those skills, and we know they can improve and increase, so we want to be working at their developmental level. We want to move from the external to internal. And what that means is you're going to provide supports and then gradually pull them back. Okay, because what we want to do is allow that individual to start doing these things instead of other people. What happens when there's executive function weaknesses is we put people in place to become the executive functioner for that child. How many of you have a student who has behavior issues and the answer is give them a para? That's all you hear. Just give them a para, just give them a para, right? Well, what are we wanting the para to do? We're wanting the para to become their executive functioner, right? To tell them, oh, it's time to do this. Do you have these materials together? Here's this. Sure, we might use a para educator to read things to them and doing that, but a lot of what we're expecting adults to do is become the executive functioner instead of teaching the students the deficit skills so that they can start doing those things. And we do those things through assistive technology, through providing visual supports, all those different things, and gradually pulling back. And again, we'll talk a lot about that tomorrow. We also modify tasks to match the student's capacity for effort. If we know that the student can blow up if something just goes a little bit wrong, we're going to make sure that we're matching things to that pretty significant weakness in executive functioning skills, right? So, or I'm sorry, in emotional control. So we're going to match that, but we're also going to work on how can we increase and improve that. And then the student's desire for control. Anybody have kids who like to control things? Like to control? Yeah. So when my son was born, my son is actually now 29. So I tell stories about when my kids were little, and my kids are both adults. My daughter, her husband just turned 25 yesterday. And so we are like, oh, you can rent a car and now your insurance goes down. So anyway, so when my son was born, he was the first grandchild born on my side of the family. And so of course, everything I did, my mom was like, that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. Oh, you give him way too much control. You need to just tell him, you just need to set it and do it. And I was like, Mom, okay, I know what my goal is. If my goal is he's going to get upstairs to go to bed at 8 o'clock, then how he gets up there, what he wears, I don't really care. I'm going to let him have control as long as my goal of him getting to bed at 8 o'clock has happened. So whether we hopscotch up the stairs, I carry him on my back, he rolls up the stairs, give him the desire for control within the context of what your goals are. So how can you include the desire for control with the student? So maybe you let them pick some of the visual supports they're using or things like that. So here was my aha moment. Okay, well, first of all, so I was first asked, do any of you know who Gail Bowser is out of Oregon. Yeah, I call Gail Bowser one of the OGs of assistive technology. I think there's about, in my mind, about 5. Gail's one of them. Gail and Jane Corsten and Joy Zabala and Penny Reed and Kelly Fauner. So I was working with Gail on something for Infinitech. And so then I was telling her a little bit about what I do with my business. And she was like, well, what are your topics? And I said, well, I do a lot on executive functioning skills. And then I'm a speech path, so I do a lot on AAC and AT. And she said, well, have you ever thought about doing something on executive functioning skills and AAC? And I was like, no, that would be kind of interesting. And she said, well, would you do it for us in Oregon? And I went, sure. Okay, when Gail Bowser asks you to do something, you don't say no. So I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. That was in like September, and I was supposed to do it in May, and I put it off and put it off and put it off. And I remember saying to one of my really good friends from Infinitech, I'm like, what did I say yes to? I can't pull this together. And this was my aha. So I looked at what we do to support executive function skills. And then I'm like, wait a minute. See if, sorry. All right, we do the same thing in AAC, okay? So here's what's best practice in AAC. So when you look at teaching the deficit skill in AAC, that is us teaching the system, right? We don't just hand a kid a device and then go, good luck. Well, some people do, but we shouldn't, right? We teach them. We teach them the system. We use it. We model it, okay? I'm modeling the language. Remember, we don't learn a language in which we have not been exposed to, so I'm exposing the student to that language. I'm using it with them. I'm continually doing it. When they give me back something that is a mishit, even if it is, I go, oh, you pressed pretzels. I don't have any pretzels here today, but I have some cookies. Did you mean cookies? And I do that kind of thing. I'm going to give it back to them in the proper way. When we consider the developmental level, this is where we do things like looking at functions of language. We look at system selection. Is this somebody who needs a motor planning system? Is more a category-based system? Is going to do better with I don't know, I'm thinking of, Prolo Quo or Touch Chat or, what system. We look at those specific things. We don't just say this is the system you get, good luck. We look at that developmental level. We look at core words. Where is the student right now? What words are they using? Kind of what is their MLU when it comes to words? When we move from external to internal, we do this by providing visual supports, by color coding on the system. We use aided language. We pull back prompts as students learn the system, right? We're going to do a lot more prompting and a lot more cueing when the student is early in learning that system versus later in learning the system. Once they learn it, are we still going to prompt and cue? No, we're going to let them go with it, right? And so that's the thing, is moving external to internal. Modifying tasks. You may have somebody who uses more core words. You may have somebody who's more of a Gestalt language processor or GLP, which is not my area. So if you have questions on that, find somebody else to ask, because that's not my area. How you set up the system, we're going to modify that based on their capacity. And then again, their desire for control. We're going to take their lead. If the student goes into categories and starts talking about colors, we're not going to go, can't talk about colors right now. We're going to go, oh, colors, and you may then incorporate colors into the lesson they're doing, right? So we're going to take their lead. So this was my aha of, this is how they connect together, right? This is how executive function skills and language, or AAC, connect together, is because the principles for improving fit within our best practice of AAC. Questions over any of this? Okay. Is this a new concept? Pretty like, oh yeah, I'm good with that? Or is this like, wow, hadn't really thought about that? How many of you are like, well, I hadn't really thought about that? Okay, how many of you are like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, okay. Like I said, not rocket science, right? You're going, oh yeah, that kind of fits together. All right, so when we look at AAC, or augmentative communication, we learn a new skill. We know it takes time, right? And it requires others to speak that language. We've already talked about that. This is an important thing. We have to have a growth mindset of not yet when it comes to AAC. I get so frustrated when a child has had a device 3 weeks and somebody says it's not working, they can't use it, they don't do it. Okay, I am going to send you to China for 3 weeks. And when you cannot fully speak that language in 3 weeks, I'm going to say you're incapable. No, you just haven't had the exposure. You haven't had the time. You haven't been immersed enough. We also know that it's messy. Okay, how many SLPs have wanted to be an OT or PT before because it's more linear? Yeah, okay, sorry. I don't mean that what you do isn't important, it is, but you usually crawl before you walk, before you run. Language is not like that. It is so messy. It is so messy. My daughter's first word, as I say this, was, "What's that?" It was not 3 words. It was not, "What is that?" It was not apostrophe that. It was a single, "What's that?" That was one word for her because she said it as one chunk all the time to be like a question kind of thing. She didn't have what, she didn't have this is, and she didn't have that, so it was not considered 3 words. It's messy. And so AAC is the same thing. And again, we correct the mistakes same way as you would if you were learning another language. We model it, and it takes time. Typical language speaker, student neurotypical, immersed in English all the time. At what age do we expect them to speak and have language? What age? 6 months? Raise your hand if you think it's 6 months, and it's okay if you do. 9? 12? 18 months? Yeah, 18 months. We're starting to go, yeah, they should be having some language. 18 months, 12 plus hours a day, 7 days a week. How many of you have seen the quote by Jane Corsten? Okay. Yeah. So if you don't know, and I should have it up here, I don't. Jane has become a very good friend of mine. We actually present together. So I need to have her do a little video of her talking about it. But she figured out that if you took 12 hours a day for 18 months and that kind of stuff, and how many hours it would take, and I don't have the exact number, but the amount of time of input that somebody gets of language, if you do 2 times a week for 20 minutes with a communication device, it would take 84 years to get the same amount of input. But yet, we give a kid a device and have the same expectations after 3 weeks or 3 months that they're going to be using the system independently. And that's just not realistic. So it takes time. So I had a student one time who had a system, and I think he was using Proloquo, and the speech path came back about a year later and said he needs LAMP. We're really seeing he's a motor planning kid. Okay, so that long story, they ended up doing LAMP with him. But after about 18 months, she came up to me and said, "Guess what he did yesterday?" And I was like, "Oh no, what'd he do?" She said, "We were in the library and he grabbed his communication device. He came up to me and said, 'Cookie, mouse, book.'" What did he want? If you give a mouse a cookie, 18 months. But he was able to put those together because there was input, and he was able to do it. So I always tell people, don't tell me it's not working until you've been doing it at least a year with fidelity, okay? Because then we should be seeing some progress. When we're looking at AAC, there's a book called Make the Connection by Susan Berkowitz, and she talks about that you need at least 200 opportunities a day to become proficient with AAC. 200 opportunities a day. How many people know situations in where the communication device sits on the shelf except when the SLP is there? Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, it's speech time, go get your device." They're not going to get 200 a day doing that, right? You must develop language in national context. AAC users have not had the experiences with the power of communication. So here's another connection with executive function skills. What do you need to develop executive function skills? Experiences. What do many of our students who are complex communication kids, who also very likely have complex bodies, not get a lot of? Experiences, right? I one time worked with an individual who had SMA, I can't remember what it is, spinal muscular atrophy, or I maybe, is that correct? And she literally only had an eye gaze. That's all her body would do. And so her life was spent watching videos. So while cognitively she had the ability, because with SMA, it is believed that there's no cognitive impact, she did not have the experiences because she was physically not out in the world. She was not touching water. She was not walking, getting sand in her toes, you know, all those things, feeling the heat because she was trached and she was on a ventilator and all those things. So she didn't have the experiences. So when we started going to a system, we ran into some roadblocks, not because of ability, not because of cognitive ability, but because of lack of experiences. And that's what happens with a lot of our kids, again, with complex communication and complex bodies, is they don't have these experiences. So we need to make sure we do that. And research tells us that routines are the heart of symbol and language development. And so again, a lot of times, these kids with complex bodies and complex communication, what is with them all of the time? A person who's pushing them around, who may not even say it's time to go to lunch. They may just wheel them out of the room, who may not even say, oh, it's time to go to the bathroom. I'm going to lift you 1, 2, 3. They may just whip them up, lift them, stick them in the bathroom, no communication, those kinds of things. And so they don't have those experiences. They're not given the ability to learn the routines, show initiation and anticipation for different routines. Is there anybody in here who works with the deaf-blind population? Yeah, so with the deaf-blind population, it is really, really important to have those cues and have those routines embedded in, and you're looking for those anticipatory things of, like, if I say it's time to eat, maybe the body leans forward, the mouth opens, those different kinds of things as we're presenting that. And that one of the most important skills is being able to gain attention in an appropriate way, right? Instead of throwing myself down on the ground, it is to tap you on the shoulder, come over to you, stand in proximity to you, not throw something at you or scream or throw myself down on the ground or cry or do nothing. I have had students before who literally would sit for an entire day and not initiate because they were used to somebody always telling them it's okay, it's time to initiate, because they had become so prompt dependent. So we want to be careful about not turning individuals into being so prompt dependent and being able to gain attention when they need it. Okay, I'm going to ask everybody, what time did we start? 30 minutes, so about what, 12:30? Okay. All right, I'm going to ask everyone to stand up real quick. Get some shakes out. I see some people, the carbs are starting to hit. I don't have an official break set in, but we'll probably take one, I'm going to say, in about 30 minutes. So everyone just stand up, and I want you to, real quick, turn to somebody you don't know and tell them your favorite kind of ice cream. Just real quick, favorite kind of ice cream. Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead and sit back down if you need to sit. If you need to stand or move around, please feel free to do that. How many chocolate chip lovers do we have? Chocolate chip? How many coffee ice cream? Are there any coffee ice cream? I love coffee ice cream. Coffee ice cream, there we go. Coffee ice cream. All right. Vanilla? Got some vanilla chocolate? I'm trying to think of other kinds. Cookie? Cookie ice cream? Oreo? Mint chip? That's my husband's favorite too. Yeah, my husband's favorite too. Okay, so we're going to jump into talking about vocabulary. Before I jump into vocabulary, any questions right now? So we talked about executive function, we talked about AAC and communication. Any questions? Okay. All right. We're going to jump into vocabulary. So there is no official word order to learning words. Okay. I'm going to sit down here for a second. My hips trying to tell me to take a quick break, so give me a second. I was telling Julia when I came in that during my recovery, I averaged 900 steps a day. Yeah, that's going to be too high. How do I? Sorry. Thank you. Austin's my assistant here. Thank you. Might have to. No, I think more. I want this, I think. See if that works. Oh yeah, so much better. Hopefully I won't fall off this. Okay, so I was telling them that during my recovery, I averaged 900 steps a day according to my watch. And the last 2 days, I have, between the two of them, done 14,000 steps. So that's like 2 weeks worth of walking. And so I'm getting there. I'm hoping to get to 10,000 a day soon. But okay, so word learning order. There is not a developmental order to word learning. And while I think we all know this, when I read this, I was like, huh, yeah, I guess there really isn't. How many of you have children of your own? How many of them learn the word mine as their first word? Want? That? Yeah, but yet these are the words that we put on AAC devices and the first words we put on kids. And I'm not saying this is wrong, but on almost every kid's device, the things, what are the 3 words people want kids to be able to say? More, want, help, maybe bathroom, right? How many of you had kids that had those, any of those had more, want, or help as their first words? Yeah, mine didn't. Like I said, my daughter's was, what's that? She's a teacher, so that just makes sense, right? She's a teacher now. My son, his was ball. He ended up being a football player, so that kind of fit with him. But we all, if you have more than one child, they probably had different first words, right? And maybe even their second and third and 10th word weren't the same. And that's because there is no order to how we develop words. It's all based on our experiences. And so in choosing the words to teach, they say the order of learning words resides in children's environments and experiences, what they see, hear, are told, and read. How many of you have kids with AAC devices that rarely, if ever, get read a book? Yeah. Or how many times do they read the book to the student? Once, maybe twice. How many of you with your personal children have the book Goodnight Moon memorized because you read it 52,000 times, right? To the point that if you accidentally skipped a page, what happened? They would tell you skipped a page, right? Because they had it memorized. But we don't give these same experiences to our kids who are complex communication users. We do maybe a book one time. We don't pull out books. They're not going to pick this up. They're not going to do this. They're not going to get it. They're, whatever. They don't look at the book. Okay, they don't have to look at the book, right? We're still going to do these things. And then what I want you to do is use this QR code, or you can join on Slido and tell me, what format do you use to teach AAC vocabulary? And if this one doesn't work for you, again, that's where the sheets are in your around area. What format do you use to teach AAC vocabulary? So I think it's, and the most. So if you're like, well, I do all of these, which one do you do the most? And so I think it's going to be core words, fringe, and tiered, unless it gave something that I didn't put on there. I need to figure out what that other one is. Does everyone have this one? It's not an active poll. I thought I turned it on. Okay. Thought I activated it before I left. I also changed a bunch of slides the other day, and they didn't save. I think it's this one. Okay, let's try it again. Do you need the... All right, let's pretend we're just starting this over. Is there an all of the above? No. Pick which one you do the most. I'm making you make a choice. Okay, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's what form. So sorry, it wasn't the core word. I changed it. I did change the spell in person. So student-led is most. Word of the day, word of the week. We wing it, whatever word sometimes. Curriculum-based. Let's see. Category-based or no formal teaching plan. So mostly are student-led. Okay. Okay. And I'll be honest, none of these are right or wrong. I mean, we all do all of them, right? Okay. So now we're going to get in and talk about some different kinds of words. Core words. How many of you are familiar with core words? Okay, so core words, for those of you who aren't familiar, there have been studies done, and there are 400 words that make up 80% of what we say. And those are considered the core words. Core words have bang for their buck kind of thing, like the word turn. Okay, turn can mean my turn, your turn. It can mean turn around. When I'm driving and I missed my exit the other day, it was like turn, do a U-turn, that kind of thing. So turn can have a lot of different meanings. So you can see there's 400 words that make up 80%. We use these. These are usually taught in the natural environment, and they're reinforced in different situations. Here's an example of some core words. Stop, go, more, turn, mine, on, off, up, down, that. So what I would like to do is I'm going to give you 1 minute to make as many 2 or more combinations with just these words. You cannot add other words to it. You can't say go outside. It has to be go and then something. I'm going to give you 1 minute. I have nothing to give you if you win. I will be honest. I could give you a business card. I tried to not bring extra stuff with me. And so I streamed everything down. Okay. If I had been driving, my car would have been full. I would have ended up at every Dollar General on the way, because I love to go to Dollar General and find stuff and give it away. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute on my timer to come up with as many 2-word options as you can, starting now. And keep count. I'm good. Okay, you've got 30 seconds left. Five seconds. All right, there you go. There's your stop. Okay, how many people had at least 5 combinations? Raise your hand. 10? 15? Who are my speech paths? Are you guys my speech paths? Yeah, of course. 20? Wow, 25. You guys have done this before, haven't you? Have you had LAMP training? Okay, there you go. 30. Anybody have more than 25? 30? Okay. Now, what if this had been iPad, cookie, goldfish, drink? I'm trying to think. Bluey. I don't know, whatever. The other things that people are always wanting us to do on things, they don't have as much power for them, right? They are just kind of independent. So give me some ideas of things that you had. Did you write any of them down? Okay, here, we've got Hugh over here.
I figure you can combine pretty much all of those words together, so you can get almost 100 if you want to do that.
Did you major in math also?
No, I actually tapped out when that hit the
Yeah,
the
me
point
too.
where I had to do.
My daughter's a high school math teacher, and I'm like, ooh. Actually, she's elementary right now, but she just changed to high school. Okay. Wow. Yeah, almost 100. I didn't do the math on that.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
Almost 100 if you just do 2-word combinations. So I need to put somebody on here who's a statistician who could tell me like how many up to 5-word combinations you could make with this, but it's a lot, right? Give power in core words. And so that's what the focus of core words are. Okay. We did that. Okay.
Austin can ask ChatGPT.
Oh, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay, let's just be honest. How many of you love AI for supporting you to work smarter and not harder? Yes, we're going to talk about that some tomorrow. Okay. Okay, so fringe words. Fringe words are what I call the spice words, right? They're the words that give those things a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more meaning. It might make something a little bit more spicy and exciting, or a little bit more sarcastic and a little bit more salty. So like mine pumpkin. So what am I talking about if I say mine pumpkin? I might mean my pumpkin. I might mean something that's orange, right? I might mean a book. My nephew had this stuffed pumpkin. He's like 30 now. This stuffed pumpkin when he was little, and there was pumpkin, and then when it wore out, we gave him a second one, and its name became Two. And so, my pumpkin couldn't be my pumpkin. It could be my stuffy. It could mean a lot of different other things. Go train. Okay, so train is not a core word, go is. So when you put that together, again, those are core words. Dinosaur is a fringe word, okay? For some kids, though, dinosaur is like, holy moly, right? It's where they kind of live, right? So those are fringe words. Then when we talk about tiered words, okay, I am going to be completely transparent with you guys. I have been a speech pathologist for 35 years. It wasn't until 33 years into my career I heard anyone talk about tiered words. So I'm being completely honest with you. And when I did, I was like, I always knew this. I just didn't have a word for it. I didn't have the language for it. And I actually went to, I think it was a PRC seminar at Closing the Gap a couple of years ago, and they talked about this. So I was like, ooh. So I actually bought the books. I buy books all the time that it goes with. So it goes with a book called Bringing Words to Life, which is not a special education. It's a book about vocabulary building in classrooms. And so they talk about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 words. And these are not the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 like we talk about in, do you guys do MTSS in Utah? Yeah, that we talk about in MTSS. So it's totally different than that. So let go of that. So tier 1 are our most basic words. They're the words that I am using right now, the words you all are using right now. They're the words that we use in most speech and communication that we're doing throughout the day. Those are tier 1 words. Tier 2 words are words that we typically use for more mature language users. Okay, those are going to be words that we find in conversations and in print, and we might see in some basic articles that we're reading. If you have an article that you're reading that's maybe written at about an 8th grade reading level, which a lot of articles are written at about that level, those are going to be tier 2 words. And then tier 3 words are low frequency words. And these are the words that we typically use and are found in literature and found in like research and those kinds of things. So an example with dinosaur would be dinosaur is probably a tier 2 word. The specific names of dinosaurs would be a tier 3 word. Okay, so those kinds of things. Like I said, this was new to me. I was like, oh, well, gosh, okay. So how does this all fit together? Well, all core words are tier 1 words, but not all tier 1 words are core words, okay? So the word cookie is not a core word, but it is a tier 1 word, okay? Because it is something that is frequently used in, just everyday conversation, okay? So are people good with tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3? Okay, all right. So as we look at that, one of the reasons I want to bring that up is because when we look at communication devices, you are going to see all of those different kinds of communication words on a system. It is always, as a speech path who focuses on AAC, I've always felt a strong, I don't know what the right word is, but I've always felt very strongly that a child or student's ability to communicate with an AAC device is only as strong as my ability is to make sure it's programmed correctly. Because if the word isn't on there, they're probably not going to be able to say it unless they're able to type it. And very few of our children are given the opportunity to learn how to spell and type. And so we want to make sure that those vocabularies are as robust as possible, but it is impossible to have every single word that you could possibly want to have on a communication device. Okay, where are we on time? All right. Okay, how many of you know the communication matrix or have ever used it? Okay, great. So the communication matrix is free for up to 2 uses. It used to be 5, it is now 2. And it used to cost $1 if you wanted to buy extra. It's now $5, so inflation. But it's still very, very inexpensive. And you can also buy it as a group. Like when I was in the district I was in, we bought like a group of 20 and then we could, you know, like push them out to people. So you can buy them as a group. And I don't know if there's a discounted rate or not. I haven't looked into that. But then you can push them out and give them to people. So we're going to spend some time talking about the communication matrix. Okay, real quick. Are you guys together in teams? Kind of? Okay. So raise, okay, let me see. If you are, how do I want to do this? Because I was going to say if you're in a team, but then everyone's going to raise their hand. Okay. So I don't know. How do I want to do this? Team letters? Oh, where's team A? Do we have team A here? How many what letters does it go to? I don't know. We'll just keep going. Do I have team A here? Anybody? Team A? We've got team A. One team A. Are you sole team A? Thanks for being here. B? Okay. Yeah, if you're B, raise your hand together so I can kind of see together. Okay. All right. C? Do we have C here? D? Okay. E? F? F in the back. There you go. Your back seat sitters, I get it. F, E, F, G. Sorry, it takes me, I might have to sing it. G, H. They don't like each other enough to sit next to each other, or they just want to make sure they're comfortable. No, I'm teasing. Okay, we all do that. I have a friend that I worked with for 15 years, and her joke was she needs more support the further away she got away from our office. And I knew exactly where to sit. If we had been here at the conference together, we would have had to sit over there in the back because she needed to be close to an exit towards the back, you know, kind of be able to do a quick leave out. Okay, so I did E, F, G, H, okay, I, hi, J. Oh, J, you're kind of scattered, J. Your friends are in the back. K. L. M. Okay. I like how she raised both hands. We're going to make it look like. N. O. P. Am I just making a, am I still going Q? R. S. T. U. There we go. V. W. This is fun. There you go. We got little hand signals over here. W, X. Y. Z. Do we have double A? Do you go that way? No, just go to Z? Okay. All right. I can just start making up combinations of, do we have AK? Do we have AZ? What do you? I'm sorry. CHA. Okay. There you go. And she has a really cute outfit on. I've thought about buying one of those on Amazon, so it was really fun to see somebody actual. Do we have a charter B? Okay. That's all of us. Okay, great. That just kind of helps me know. Okay, all right. So, okay. We may do some stuff with that later. I'm still trying to decide how to break some stuff up in the afternoon. I think I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Okay, we're going to go for about 15 more minutes and take a break at 2. How does that sound? You guys can hang on for about 15 more minutes? Okay, so we're going to talk about communication matrix. So again, it's free 2 assessments. You can do it on paper, or you can do it online, or you can do it on paper and then put it online. And you can purchase additional copies. You can purchase a custom report. I'm going to tell you the custom report is pretty fancy. You have to put a lot of information in as you are setting it up to get like a really thorough. Has anybody ever pulled the report before? Yeah, the more you fill out about the student, the more it will like do. So as you start going in and start doing it, when it starts asking you all these questions and you're like, I really don't want to fill all this out, unless you're going to buy the report, you don't need to. Okay, and then it does have a scientific foundation to it. So that's one of the reasons I really like to talk about the communication matrix, is there is a scientific foundation to this. The matrix structure, it has 4 different areas. It has refusal, obtaining, engaging, and providing. And so this is how it's broken up. So it is broken up into these 4 sections and 7 levels. So you can see right here, we have 7 levels. We have refuse, obtain. So in level 1, right here, we're going to go across. We have to refuse. At level 1, you're going to express discomfort, express comfort, and express interest. Notice it says express. Am I using words at this point? No, I'm not. I'm not going to be using words at this point. When we look at level 2, we have protesting, continues in action, and tracks. And you see the information, it isn't until 4 and higher that somebody even has the ability to give information. Okay, so on the communication matrix. So how many of you have never seen the communication matrix? Okay, I'm going to blow your mind. And again, I had nothing to do with the communication matrix. I wish I did. It's awesome. Oh, that's not what I wanted to show you. Well, I will in a minute. Okay, so when you are scoring that the student has either mastered it, it's emerging, or they don't have it. That's all you need to know. They have this, it's emerging, or they don't have it. And this is what it gives you, is it gives you this beautiful graph, okay, for free, for 2 kids, free. And you can also go in and you can update it. And because it has all these different little areas, you can use this. It is great to use for IEP goals and to show progress, because little increments of growth are going to show on this. So how many of you have ever struggled with writing a really, really good goal for an AAC user and being able to show the progress and growth, right? You know, you might say, oh, they're going to use this or this and this. And, you know, I always tell people, don't write button pushing goals. Don't write goals about they're going to access 10 buttons. I don't care if they access 10 buttons. I care what they do when they access buttons, right? So don't just say 10 buttons, because what are we doing with those 10 buttons? So write goals that are strong for communication, and then the AAC system goes on top of it. But I digress. So here's the matrix. This is just one that I made up. I don't know if this will work. Do we have this? Trying to see, do I have it up? No, it's not up there. Okay, so when we look at this, you'll see the orange means that they have mastered it. Gray is that they have surpassed it, or I'm sorry, they've mastered, they've surpassed this, and then the yellow is emerging and the white is not used. So if you were doing this for communication goals, you could then do this as a baseline, do all your great, wonderful speechy things, or your teaching things, or your OT things, or your PT things, or whatever, come back together as a team and go 6 months later, 3 months later at your progress monitoring stage, hey, let's go and update this. And you can go and update that. And then maybe this one, which says greets people, goes from emerging to mastered. And so then it becomes orange. And then this one, ask questions, stays yellow. But then we go from request attention from not used to maybe it's yellow. And so then you can show another copy and go, look, this is how they progressed and how much progress they've made. So you can keep using it over and over again. Has there been anybody who's used it and has continued to use it over and over again for a student? You have. What has been the response when you show the graph to people? Yeah. Would you mind saying that again? And you have to
Yeah,
really
so
speak
it's
into it.
really helpful for people to be able to see the gains, especially for these kids that their gains may be very small and incremental. Even parents, like I've had parents do it multiple times over the years, like at their reevaluations, and you can see, especially because we don't always see the progress, and this helps to show like, look, this is where they were. Oh, I didn't realize that they'd made gains, because it takes it down to such a small level.
Yeah, and behind you in the Wyoming shirt. What has been your experience with it?
Pretty much the same thing, just being able to, I think parents are able to see a lot of the growth there, but sometimes, because the parents are with the child more than the teachers that they interact with. So I use it more for the teacher aspect to kind of show them the growth over time.
Yeah, and that growth over time, because a lot of times it is so slow and incremental, we don't realize that a student has progressed as much as they have. So it is really, really powerful for that. Okay, so when we use the communication matrix, I'm going to break this out for you. All right, so here is the stuff that's on the communication matrix. The communication matrix, again, is 7 different levels, and these levels go with different age. And so when they created the communication matrix, it's actually created for normal language development. Okay, it's not created, it's created to be used with people who are complex communication users, but it was created with the baseline of typical development. Does that make sense? So when we say 0 to 3 months, it's typical development of 0 to 3 months is what we think of as level 1. Are you good on that? Okay. So when we look at pre-intentional behavior is 0 to 3 months, these are behaviors that are not under somebody's control. Does anybody have a little baby here, a 0 to 3 month old in their life? Anybody? 2 grandkids. Okay, so their behavior is not under their control, right? They cry when they're hungry, they fuss when they're wet or dirty, and those kinds of things, right? And we interpret those given what they do, right? And over time, you learn the hungry cry from the tired cry, from the wet cry, from the dry cry, from the I'm bored cry or whatever, right? We learn those things. So those are pre-intentional behaviors. Then we have intentional behaviors that start to happen at 3 to 8 months. And these are under the individual's control, but they're not really yet used intentionally. Okay, again, 3 to 8 month olds. We interpret this based on facial expressions, vocalizing, eye gaze. You know, babies, 0 to 3 months, they're still in that place where they kind of look through you at times, right? Unless you're moving, you know, but when we get to that 3 to 8 months, they start looking at you. You start getting that eye gaze. They smile at you. We interpret that as happy or, you know, those different kinds of things. So that's intentional. Unintentional is 6 to 12 months. They're used intentionally to communicate, but it does not involve a symbol system yet. So it's not actual words, okay? Maybe you've taught kids sign language. You know, I taught my kids some basic sign language and they were able to use that way more. I truly believe, I have no research on this. I mean, no actual research, but I believe as a speech pathologist that kids start talking way before we realize it, but we don't understand their patterns because they're so atypical. But if you listen enough, you hear a pattern and it's like, oh, that pattern of sounds is indicating, you know, a drink or milk or something like that, but they're so, you know, obscure, we don't get them. But that's 6 to 12 months, right? And they're still not expected to use words. So in this level right here, up through 4, in these 4 areas up to 18 months, we are seeing behavior, conventional communication. Right? And conventional communication is 12 to 18 months, and we are using it intentionally to communicate, but still it doesn't really involve a symbol system. It is more pointing, nodding, shaking the head, waving, hugging, grabbing, those kinds of things at that 0 to 12 months. So then the next kind of stage, if we want to say, of communication is that symbol. So again, those first 4 areas, no symbols are used. The next 5 and 6, symbols are used. And so we have concrete symbols and abstract symbols. And concrete symbols, most people skip over concrete symbols because most of us go from conventional communication to abstract because we're using words and words don't really go with what we're saying unless it's, you know, I don't know. A few words do, but anyway, most of them don't. And it talks about that here. Most people skip over that and go directly to 6. But for some of our students who use communication devices, they may use actual things like this might mean water, right? Because that's what my water's in, or a cup might mean that. Or my iPad means iPad, or those kinds of things. So we actually are using symbols. And again, that's 12 to 24 months. So that's a year to 2 years of development, typical neurotypical development. And we are seeing symbols and them being used. And then when we get into that next stage of 24 months and above is when we see symbols. Both of these are combined into 2 to 3 words and used for different things. We start looking at grammatical words. So again, we've got these 3 different chunks of not really having symbols, but just those single words, and then having language. All right. So we have those 3 different areas. We are actually going to, I think, take our break right now before we get into this next piece. And what we're going to do, we're going to come back at 2:15, and we're going to take this, and then we are going to combine it or lay it over executive function skills. So start to bring these 2 ideas together. Okay, so we'll take a break. I'll put a timer up for 15 minutes. Okay, whoops. All right. We are ready to be back. Did anybody else? I saw a number of people out taking a little walk. I went and sat outside and was assured this is not normal. I get it. I know. I was like, ooh, I might have a little sunburn from sitting outside. It's beautiful though. So hopefully you got a little break, a little bit more energy. So quick question as we come back is, what is your superpower? Okay, I believe everyone has a superpower. It can be very unique. It can be very useless in certain situations, useful in other situations. So is anybody want to share what your superpower is? And then I will share with you guys what mine is. Superpower. Anybody have a superpower they want to share? Perfect timing. Give me some more information on that. Perfectly good timing or perfectly bad? Why do I feel like he's a comedian? He's the one who was also with the person from Argentina. Yeah, there we go.
And he said unfortunate. Did you say unfortunate, or am I making that up? Okay. I want to hear more about that.
So either perfectly good or perfectly bad timing. Okay. Anybody else?
I will have ideas for my kids come up at the most random times. Like I'll be in the shower, I'll be watching a movie, something like that. And I'll be like, oh, I should definitely try that. And it's like something telling me I should, it's just weird. But like I count on that kind of idea coming to me. Or like over summer break, I'll be thinking of my kiddos and I'll be like, oh, I should definitely try
I know.
that.
They need to make a pad of paper for the shower, right? So we can just write our shower ideas down. Anybody else have a superpower they want to share? So my random superpower is that I can plan out the timing. So when you said timing, I can plan the timing out on a presentation within 2 minutes, even if I'm doing an 8-hour presentation. I have the skill. So my goal when we got here was that we'd be an hour and a half in, and we're an hour and a half in. So that's my strange superpower. Jane Corsten and I do a lot of presenting together, and we joke about that because that is not her superpower. And she's always like, you figure out the timing stuff, Paige, because that's your superpower. And hers is, wonderful other ideas and everything. But that's a random superpower that if I didn't do what I did, it would be totally useless. But doing what I do, it has become very helpful. So, okay. So we've got about another hour and a half-ish in that we are going to cover. So, okay. So we did communication matrix. Here we go. Okay. So we just finished talking about the different pieces of the communication matrix. So now remember, there's those 7 areas, right? The first 4 were no symbolic communication. The next 2, 5 and 6, were some symbolic communication. And then 7 was language. Okay. Language being more than single words and using them in a multiple different areas. All right. Again, typical development. So now we are going to look at typical development executive function skills, and we are going to crosswalk those or lay those on top of each other. All right. So when we look at development, I feel like I'm going to fall off the stage at some point, and that would not. The one thing my doctor has told me is don't fall. Whatever you do, you have no limitations, but don't fall. So when I started being able to walk or, doing stuff, I was like, I better not use crutches because I am not that coordinated. So I was with a walker. Okay. So communication matrix level 1 through 5, 6, again, no symbolic communication to very early symbolic communication, is developmentally 0 to 24 months. So when we are looking at neurotypical executive function development and language development, this is the combination of what we see. So our executive function development is we have planning, we have pointing and grabbing or acting on our environment. We have organization, matching skills. That's what that looks like, matching skills. You can match the colors, you might be able to match shapes, you can match different things. We see the overgeneralization of categories, where if the child has a dog, all 4-legged animals are dogs. So if you're in Kansas and you're driving and you see lots of cows and the child doesn't have the word cow yet, they call them dogs. Right? Or maybe you have a cat and your child has learned kitty, and then they see a dog for the first time and they call it a kitty because they overgeneralize it, right? That is developmentally appropriate. Our working memory at that game are simple recall games. Peekaboo, that's a great working memory game, right? Participating and enjoy simple familiar rhymes and songs. Begin to fill in the blank when pausing on familiar songs. So Old MacDonald had a farm. Okay, we do those things, right? With kids, they start to fill those things in. We pause. So when my son was young, again, it's been over almost 30 years, we had this book that had a cassette tape. That's how long ago it was. And it was an ABC song thing, and it said A is for apple, excuse me, I'm not a singer. B is for ball, C is for candy, D is for doll. I still remember it. Did anyone else have that book? Okay, I don't remember where we got it. But so we would say, I remember he was about 18 months old, and we would go, A is for, and we would kind of pause, and he would say, appa. We would say, B is for, bah. So he would start filling those things in. Okay, that was that working memory that we were practicing at that age. And then if he didn't say it, we would say it for him, right? So that is developmentally what is happening in neurotypical kids. Then when we start getting to age 2 and 4 years, which is toddlers, we are now getting it past that 1 through 4 levels. We are now getting into that 5, 6, and beginning into 7. So we're starting to see a combination of 2 words and a combination of 3 words, but maybe not all the time, right? So what happened between this and this? What do you see has happened to the executive function skills? We've greatly increased them. What has happened with language? We're going more abstract, and we've added lots and lots of language. Think of a 0 to 2-year-old and think of a 3-year-old. What is the difference in their language? Substantial. Right? If somebody ended with language at age 3, you still can carry on a conversation with a 3-year-old. It may be really, anybody have a 3-year-old? They're the best. My son was the biggest 3-nager I think there ever was. But 3-year-olds are the best. Why they say that it's the terrible 2s, I don't know. Because 3-year-olds, man, Their world is either good or bad, right? So that's what we're seeing in this place. So with that expansion of language, we are now abstract, as she said, we are now an abstract language. We've seen this explosion of language and an explosion of the ability to use that language to support executive function skills. So we see planning. Now we can do simple instructions. You know, first I want you to go get your shoes, put on your jacket, and get your backpack, and then come over here. Okay, we don't have to just give one thing at a time. We see time management. We have time concepts, follows visual schedule, waiting, emerging. This is when you see a kid telling you that their birthday was yesterday, when their birthday was actually in October, right? Because I just know it was in the past, and I know the word yesterday means not today, and that happened in the past, but I don't really know how to use yesterday. That is what we're seeing at this age. We are seeing following visual schedules. Waiting is starting to emerge. I can wait for a short period of time, but too long, I start to have a meltdown. Task initiation, starting and completing tasks up to 10 minutes. Now, I do want to preface all of this and say, the younger a child has access to technology, specifically lots of screen time, this is going to reduce. I could do a whole bunch on the impacts of technology on executive function skills and on kids' brains. I actually, because of time, cut that stuff out, but I will tell you there's lots of information and the research is in and it's not good. And I think you guys all know that. So the sooner we add those things into kids' lives, there was actually a study by a group out of the UK called Sapin Labs, I think is what it is. And they found, sorry, my shoe just came off. They found that the earlier that the child has access to technology, they estimate that it is reducing face-to-face time by 1,000 to 2,000 hours per year of life. So if you figure a child comes to us at school age at 5 or 6 and they have been having access to technology, I see some kids as young as 12 months where parents are showing them movies while they're trying to feed them or different things. That is going to reduce their face-to-face time, so they are going to have more and more difficulty reading people's facial expressions, being able to interact, knowing the words to use, and all those kinds of things. So there is a place for technology. Again, I'm an assistive technology person. There's a huge place for technology, but we want to use it purposefully. So that is my TED Talk for the day on that. Okay, so task initiation, organization, we have categories, we have patterns, they clean up with assistance. And what do we do when they clean up at that age? Where am I? We sing songs, right? I'm going to do the Barney one, clean up, right? We do that and they hear that song and they start to clean up, right? We do things, we give them those patterns, we give them those ideas. Working memory, they follow along with songs, finger play, they sing some familiar songs, and we're starting to see emotional control come in. Where are my early childhood people again? Okay, so you're are you like 0 to 3 or 3 to 5? Anybody 0 to 3 in here, or anybody 0 to 3? Okay, so with those young kids, we're starting to see those emotions emerge, right? So they label their own emotions. They're starting to do that because they're used to just be happy and sad, right? I'm happy, I'm sad. And maybe they see somebody cry and they're happy crying and they say, Mommy, why are you so sad? And you're crying because, I don't know, you just won the lottery or something like that, right? You're happy crying. They don't understand that. That doesn't fit together. So they're able to label the emotions of others, but they have tantrums when they're upset, which is normal at that age. And we help them soothe, right? We help them, well, come here, let me give you a hug. Let's do this. Let's play a song. Let's get your blanket. Let's do that. We help them soothe. They don't self-soothe yet. Okay, so that is in ages 5, that range 5, 6, and 7. So we've got those single words and we're starting to get into the multiple words. When we get into developmentally 5 through 12, this is level 7, so that 3 or more words developmentally are going on. And we see planning, following steps to meet an end goal, plays games that require strategy, okay? They may be... this is kind of related, but not really. I saw a Instagram post where somebody was playing hide and seek with their dog, and their dog just like had a blanket over its face, but was still there. And you think of little kids when they're playing hide and seek, and they like stand behind a pole because they think they're hiding, those kinds of things. So we start to see that strategy come in. Time management, again, we start to see them being able to estimate time. How long is something going to take? And again, they could be completely off, but they're able to start talking about it and doing it. And if you say to them, well, how long is it until your birthday? And they say 52 years, they just blot something out, but they understand it, that it has length and it has all those different things. They can manage their leisure time, okay? They want to do certain things. They want to read a book. They want to watch a movie. They want to color. They want to draw. They want to go outside. They can do that. They may not manage it well, but they can start to do those things because they have that ability. With task initiation, independently start and complete tasks 30 to 60 minutes. Again, the more access to technology, the more you're going to see that reduced. So that number may not be correct anymore. With organization, you see sequencing and organizing stories, following simple checklists, gathers materials. And again, this is through age 12, which is like 6th grade, right? So we're seeing the school age. Working memory, independent with puzzles or games, collect information and apply it to a new setting. So they're going from being at home and eating to being in a restaurant, and they're able to know that they have to sit down, they have to be at a table, they have to, do these different things. They're going from kindergarten to 1st grade, and they know they have to be at a desk, all those different things. So they're able to apply those things. And then emotional control, now they are learning how to self-soothe. One of the things that we are seeing, and I know you guys are seeing it, is kids are having more and more difficulty self-soothing. Is that a fair statement of what you guys are seeing? Oh, I'm seeing people going, yes, right? So we're seeing that. Why? Again, technology is a huge factor in this. But another huge factor is the lack of executive functioning skills. So I don't want to throw COVID out there all the time saying it's because of COVID. But let's stop and think about this and talk about that for a second. So one of the populations I see that I am hearing is having difficulty are like 3rd graders. 3rd and 4th graders I'm seeing some nodding. 3rd and 4th graders probably are, as a whole, having some of the biggest. They were kindergarten and 1st graders when COVID was happening, right? I'm sorry, and younger. 3rd and 4th graders were younger? Oh my gosh, 5th graders now. Okay, so they were younger, so they may not have even had exposure to people, right? And what do when we're bored and we're all at home and that kind of stuff? We put on lots of stuff. I mean, again, we lived it, right? So they're younger, but another thing is those kids who were kindergartners and 1st graders and even 2nd graders, they left school with a certain amount of executive function skills, and they were out of school for the rest of that year. Did you guys go back in 2021 full blown? Most of you? Okay, you did. In Kansas, we did not. August of 2020. Okay. We went back in October of 2020, and even then it was like, I think we did remote, and then we did hybrid, and then we did, I don't even remember. It's just a blur. But anyway, so there was some going back, but again, it was the masks, and it was the social distancing and all the things that just wreaked havoc on this. And so kids that may not have gone back, or their family chose to keep them in doing online school and all those kinds of things, they left with a certain amount of executive function skills. And because they didn't have experiences, they didn't have the opportunity. So it wasn't that they lost skills, they weren't given the opportunity to develop them. But then when they came back, we expected them to have the skills that they never had the opportunity to develop, and nobody went back to fill those gaps in. But yet we're expecting them to have that. And so that's one of the things we're dealing with, is we're having to kind of go back and fill in some of those gaps. Okay, so it's that Swiss cheese effect that isn't just our kids with disabilities having some of those Swiss cheese holes. I don't know if anyone else calls it that, but it's everybody having those. I had those. It took me a long time. As I recovered from my hip and everything, I had Swiss cheese holes just from not doing what I typically did for 6 weeks. We had to move everything to the main level of our house. My husband had to move a bed to the main level of our house because our bedroom and our bathroom and everything were upstairs. My office is upstairs. Everything had to be moved down, and my world was shaken up and not planned to be shaken up. And so it took me a while to get back into being able to use those executive function skills. So that was all to say, the self-soothing, we have to teach this, and we can't just be an adult being there with them. We have to teach the skill of self-soothing. What do you need? So anything you're doing, do you guys have social emotional learning curriculum in Utah? Okay, is that taboo yet in Utah? Okay, some places it is. So anything you're doing with social emotional learning is going to support executive function skills. Just look at what you're doing and pop an executive function lens on it and see, ooh, how can I do this a little bit more executive functioning, okay? So those are the different things. So we've covered those different areas. Okay, so we've covered those different areas. So again, that 1 to 4 into 5 and 6, 5 and 6, and then 7 into language, and these 3 different areas. Thoughts on that? Is it making sense? Is it clicking together? Are we too tired? Everyone's going, Paige, get done. We want to go check into our hotels. You can't get until 3, right? I don't know. Did you already get checked in? She checked in early. It's the curly hair. We do things like that. Okay, all right. I will just say, looked at, okay, it's been really nice. Okay, so we have those different areas. So this is something that, again, I wasn't sure what our setup was going to be and time, so I didn't print this off for you. But this is something that I recommend that people do. Do an executive function checklist for your students, even your students with most complex needs. See where they are with their executive function skills. Then do the communication matrix, see where they are, and then fill out, this is on my website, it's also on the SCED that you can do. And what you want to do is you want to look at the students' executive function scores. Where are they? Which of these executive function? I just pull out these 4 because typically these are the early developing executive function skills. These are the ones you're really going to want to be focusing on, are your response inhibition, working memory, emotional control, and sustained attention. And then look at those communication matrix. And I don't know why it didn't print off 1 through 7, but it's supposed to be 1 through 7 on there. And then you're going to circle, are they surpassed, mastered, emerging, or not used in the 1 through 7 based on where 50% or more, are. So where are they? So in in level 1, okay, they've surpassed everything in level 1, they've surpassed everything in level 2, they are mostly in mastered and emerging in level 3, and kind of see where that all shakes out. And think back to those other, again, the first 3 or the first 4 were in that 0 to 24 range with our language. Does that make sense? Are we good? Making sense? Okay. All right. Okay. So this is on here. So I, just recommend to people, write it down. Talk about it as a team. Where are they? What are they doing? What are the kinds of words we would be having? So this is based on, are any of you familiar with The Set by Joy Zabala? Yes. I cannot tell you how much I love The Set. I love The Set so much that Joy and I agreed to disagree about The Set because of how I told her I did it. And the way I always do The Set is I tell people when we are talking about a student, you can only talk about the student. You can't go to environment until we're done with the student. And Joy's like, no, you should be able to go in and out. And I was like, yeah, but then you have somebody who has an agenda and it really messes things up. So anyway, I love The Set. So the set, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, was created by Joy Zabala, and it stands for Student Environment Task and Tool. And it's one of those things we use in assistive technology to help us determine what features and do feature matching. So this is kind of based on that. So When we are looking at these things, because we know communication is behavior and behavior is communication, right? So when we are looking at it, think of a behavior that is getting in the way of a student being more independent. Maybe a tantrum, maybe pinching people, maybe not paying attention, blurting something out. Give me some other things that are getting in the way. Screaming. Sleeping, shutting down. Okay, so lots of different things getting in the way. What is that behavior? And then what executive function skill do you think is connected to that? And I'm going to tell you, it's probably not just one. It's probably multiple. And different things, people will say, well, I have a kid who does this. What executive function skill is that? It's kind of like telling me you have a kid has trouble with reading, right? I need more information than that, because I might see a child who is just flopping and dropping on the floor and having a tantrum. Well, that could be emotional control. That seems like it, but it could also be response inhibition. It could also be working memory. It could be a lot of different things. I actually talked with a man the other day who's an adult who has he has executive functioning issues, is probably the best way to say it. And I was connected with him through somebody else, and we were talking about it, and he said, you know, I'm realizing my emotional control and inability to manage my emotional control is getting in the way of my relationships and being able to hold down a job for more than about 6 months. And so we talked about that and what could he do and those kinds of things. So that is, you know, and as he talked about it, and he's like, so what do you think that is? And I'm like, well, you know, it really depends. I mean, you know, it's deeper than just giving a quick answer. So really think about it, work with your team, sit together and problem solve that. What supports are in the environment now that could support that executive function? Visuals. Visuals are a huge thing we want to have in the environment. Are there other strategies? Do we have social emotional learning? What are those things already in the environment? And then if those things are not giving enough support, what are some additional things, some additional strategies that may support executive function? When we look at B's is what I call it, and AAC, what you want to do is you want to think about a student that you have that uses AAC. Again, what is the behavior? What is the executive function? What environmental supports are in place? And then what vocabulary words might you want to make sure the student has available to them on a communication device that could support that development? And then how will you do that with staff? So this on the side is the form, the behavior, the environment, and the executive function. And then I have this chart. And again, this is just to sit down as a team and problem solve. Okay, it isn't a we have to do it, but here's an idea. So what is the strategy, or what is the vocabulary we want to make sure we include? If somebody has emotional control issues, do they have the words for emotional control? Do they have the words for emotion? And brainstorm what those vocabulary words are. What do you need in order to work on that? Do you need a special curriculum? Do you need special tools? Do you need special resources? Do you need timers? Do you need what? Who do you need to bring on board? I think that's a really important discussion to have, because if you, the SLP, or you, the AT team, are the only ones doing this, it's not going to work. So who do you need to bring on board? Do you need to bring the paras on board? Do you need to bring the parents? Do you need to bring the general ed teachers? Who do you need to bring on board? And then what will you do to monitor progress? And the final thing is, what is a possible indication that it's not working? This is a very important thing I think you need to talk about as a team. Because if you talk about as a team prior to starting something, if we see this, that means it's not working. Then if you see it, you've already named it. And I feel like people that aren't pointing fingers as much. Right? Have you ever been in a situation where people are like, well, it's not working because the school isn't doing what they're supposed to, or the para isn't doing, or the parents, or whatever? You've already talked about, if we see increased behaviors for longer than 2 weeks, if we see the student having a reduction of verbal communication, blah, 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 whatever those things, that is going to be an indicator that what we are doing is not working, and we need to come back and readdress it as a team. Okay, so I feel really strongly about that. So using this form is just to help guide teams as you're having those discussions about executive function skills, behaviors, and what communication or language you want to do it. Okay, so we are going to spend the next hour-ish, I think. Are we about an hour left? Probably. Okay. Hour-ish on these executive function skills. So I'm going to give you guys a choice. Here is the choice. I think I have 3 executive function skills that we're going to focus on. 3. I think I have response inhibition, working memory, emotional control. Let me see. Give me 1 second. If I have 3 or 4, because I changed some things. So we have response inhibition, environmental supports, emotional control. So we have 3. So we have 3 different areas to focus on. And we can keep going in this direction, and then you guys are going to do some things on a Padlet. Or we can have you guys break up into some groups. So there would be a group that would focus on response inhibition, a group focusing on working memory, a group focusing on emotional control. You have the resources that are in SCED that have my slides that you can look at. You could go on the internet, look at different things, and then use the Padlet to come up with some words, and then come back, and 1 or 2 people from that group would come up and share that information with everybody. So that's the decision. It's a group decision. It isn't like some people do some and some do other. So we can continue doing it like this, that you guys, it's more sit and get, sorry. Or do some division and you guys do some stuff and then come up here and give the information. So how many of you want to continue down this venue this way? Okay, well, there you go. All right, how many people want to be participants? Well, you're all participants, but active participants. Okay, sorry. If you want to come sit up here with me, you can help me. So, okay, all right, okay. Wanted to give you the option either way. All right, so we're going to jump in. So these are 11 different executive function skills. Again, I told you that Russell Barkley found in the research that there's actually 33 different executive function skills that have been identified. These are the 11 from the book Smart But Scattered by Dawson and Guerre. I think that's how you say it. Anybody read the book Smart But Scattered? Have it? Ooh, love it? Love it. So people often ask me, well, I want to get started learning more about executive function skills. What book should I do? Well, besides the fact that I don't have a book out yet, I keep saying I'm going to do one, but I don't know. That's a lot of work that I'm not sure I can do. But my recommendation, even though it is from 2009, is the book Smart But Scattered. I think it gives the best overview and best foundation. Now, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of really, really good books. But if you want one to start on, that's what I would recommend. If you want websites to start on, there's ADD Etude. So it's ADD capital ITUT, dude. I don't know. Attitude that is really good. And then there's also Beyond Book Smart that are both really good websites. So if you want to learn more. Okay, so we are going to focus on response inhibition, working memory, and emotional control. Again, there are lots of different executive function skills. If I do a full day training on it, we go through most of them, but we are not going to go through most of them today. We are going to focus on those. So we're going to start with response inhibition. Response inhibition is considered the granddaddy of executive function skills. If you have a kid who is just an executive dysfunction mess, they probably have response inhibition issues, okay? Because if this is not there, they probably don't have time management. They probably don't have all these other things. So response inhibition is that granddaddy. And it is more difficult when you're emotionally charged, okay? I always tell people there are appropriate behaviors, or almost every behavior is appropriate someplace. Jumping up and down, screaming, yelling, throwing things, is that an appropriate behavior? What if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan? Right? When they won the Super Bowl for the second time, that's what we were doing. When they lost it, yeah, that was a whole different thing. So, but yeah, at a football game, very appropriate behavior, you know, so to say, yeah, it's not appropriate to be jumping and throwing your popcorn stuff. Yeah, it is. At certain times it is, right? And so it's knowing that, but when you're emotionally charged, response inhibition can go out the window, right? When something really hits you, For me, the thing that really hits me is when kids are not considered and their needs are not considered and kids are impacted. Watch out. I'm coming. I'm coming for you. I'm emotionally charged, and my response inhibition and things I say, I may not be able to inhibit as much, right? Because I am emotionally charged. So we know that happens. So what does this look like? Having strong response inhibition means that you can share toys or materials. You can wait for short periods of time, keep hands and feet to self, follow 1 to 2-step directions, simple rules, able to calm self down. That is what response inhibition is, right? We can inhibit those kinds of things. When response inhibition is not strong, this is what we see. Rushing through work, giving up on independent thing, finding things that are more fun, blurting out inappropriate responses. Does anybody have this student in their classroom or in their school? Yeah, and it used to be that we had 1 per building, and now we have 1 per classroom, if not 5, right? I hear the most common thing people tell me is an issue is blurting out, right? Blurting out, just not even knowing. So here's an interesting story on blurting. So right after COVID, I was called in to observe a student that had been labeled a blurter, and was having issues in the classroom, blurting out, and the teacher didn't know what to do. They were talking about pulling him out of the class, putting him in a special classroom, all these kinds of things. And so I went in and observed. And I love observing. I love observing because you see things that other people don't see, because that's what you're there to do. And it's not that people aren't doing their jobs. It's because they are doing their jobs and their back is turned while they're writing on the board or working with another student. They're not going to see those little intricacies. So when I went in and observed, I realized that this child did speak out of turn, but lots of kids in the class did. And other kids weren't getting in trouble like this student was. And so I looked at what was the difference. What was the difference when this child blurted versus the other student in the class who probably did it twice as much as he did, but nobody was bothered by it. And it was because the blurters are usually off topic. They don't know when to blurt, and they don't know when to stop blurting, right? So kids who blurt and are on topic or say a joke or something like that, it doesn't bother people usually. Or when there's that pause and somebody says something, and so then the teacher's like, okay, we need to get back on topic, versus right in the middle of something. So I was able to observe this young man, and actually we came up with a plan, and I got the plan on my website. There's actually like a blurting plan if you want to look at it, and it worked. People go, yeah, did that really work? It really did work for this young man. So anyway, response inhibition, we have those kids that are blurters, and these are myths that we hear. We hear people say they're out of control, they're the class clown, the student is rude. One of the things about executive function weaknesses is people talk about executive functions in terms of character and morality, okay? How many of you have ever heard somebody say a child is lazy? Yeah, I hate it. I hate it when people say that. Kids are not lazy. They've got a weakness in an executive functioning skill, probably task initiation. When they are considered lazy, they may have emotional control stuff and they aren't able to control their emotions, so they just shut down. But we hear these myths that people put on kids, again, character and morality things, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow, that have to do with how we perceive them instead of the action of the executive function skill. So that's what response inhibition looks like. So when we put that in AAC, or I'm sorry, in teaching response inhibition, we want to make sure we have delayed gratification, planned waiting times, earn things they want. Again, we don't have to wait for anything anymore. I used to have dial-up internet, and you would sit and wait and wait and wait for things. We had to learn how to wait. You don't have to learn how to wait anymore. If something doesn't come up immediately, I had something the other day I was wanting to come up actually on the rental car I had, and I'm like, and I just turned off the the Bluetooth and turned it back on. Cause I'm like, well, that must be what's going on. No, I just wasn't being patient. Right. So we aren't able to delay gratification. To work on that, plan ahead, prepare for the situation, do social stories, talk about what are we going to expect. Has anybody heard Sarah Ward talk about executive functioning skills? Okay, she might be more Midwest. Sarah Ward is the guru of executive functioning skills. She is amazing. And one of the things she talks about is we all use our executive functioning skills all the time. Right? And so when you came here today, had anybody ever been in this location before? Okay, so you guys all came in not knowing what to expect. I didn't know were there going to be tables, not tables. Do I prep for tables? Do I prep for you guys sitting at a table with your team? Do I not prep for a table? So when you walked in, you probably looked around. If you came by yourself, you looked around, and what were you looking for? What'd you say? Your group of people. Yeah, who do I know here? Who can I sit by? We have our group in the back who is like, how far back can we go before we're told we have to move forward, right? You kind of were like going, okay, we're going back. Are they going to tell us we have to move forward? Are they going to block this off? You know, can I sit with something with a back against it? I want a little table. There's no tables here. Darn it, there's no tables. Ooh, there's tables over there. I can do it. We're thinking through all that. Those are our executive functioning skills going on, right? So when we do that, these are the things we need to teach kids. Hey, we're going to go into a meeting today. In that meeting, there's going to be rows of chairs. And when we get to those rows of chairs, there's not going to be tables. And so if you're wanting to write on something, there are going to be some tables over to the side. So you may want to go to one of those. That's prepping for the situation ahead of time that we're doing in our heads, but our kids sometimes can't do that. So even if you have kids that are in the high incidence area, LD kiddos, that's the kind of planning they need. But when we look at our kids who have executive function issues and our AAC users, we need to start looking at what are those supports that are in their environment. So these are some environmental supports that may be in place for individuals who have more cognitive or more complex needs. We might have a wait symbol. We might have a stop symbol, visual barriers. Does anybody have a room that has tape on the floor for where kids can work? Yeah, that's a visual barrier, right? I was driving downtown yesterday, and there are bike lanes and they're green on the road. Does anyone know what I'm talking about downtown? And I was like, can I turn down this road? And my husband goes, yeah. And I go, but it's like blocked off for stuff. And he goes, no, look, there's cars over there on the side. And I was like, okay, but it had this kind of like green barrier, and it didn't feel like I was supposed to drive on that side. So visual barriers do just that. They give us things to do. They give us a response inhibition that we have to double check. Visual schedules, token boards, first then, time timer. Are these things you guys have in your room? Yeah, these are things we see in lots of rooms. So here's the work that you guys have to do. So use the QR code. If you could need the one on the paper if this isn't working for you. So what you're going to do is there's a Padlet, and you're going to put on the Padlet, what are some vocabulary words to support response inhibition that you would want to focus on for a student? So again, does everyone have that access to the Padlet? Okay, I'm going to change it back for a second. So if we are looking at these things, what vocabulary do we need to make sure a student with an AAC device has access to in order to do those things? And put those on the Padlet. And we will look at that in just a minute. And I love doing this way because people come up with the best ideas. So what you will see at the end, we need to reload. So you are just right now seeing response inhibition, but at the end, we're going to have a thing that has all three of these. Okay, we're just doing it one at a right now. So we have wait, stop, go, first, next, then. We have wait, next, wait, stop, slow. Ooh, I like that one. More time. So yeah, that's a, combination. My turn, your turn, next. Ooh, we have a lot. First, then, next, again, wait, later, what, when, help, want, first, then. Yeah, I will be honest, I don't know that I ever purposefully taught first and then. I will be honest about that. I don't know that I ever purposefully taught the words first and then. I used them, but I don't know that as I picked words of the week or as I picked different things to teach, that I purposefully did that. And that's the idea behind this. And again, there's no developmental word order, so I will just speak from my experience. People would say, well, we have a student who has this communication device. How are we going to work on it? What are we going to teach? And we would be like, oh, let's do a word of the week. Anybody do word of the week? Okay. Anybody do word of the day? Okay, so sometimes there's a word of the week. We're going to focus on these 3 words this week, and we're going to do these words of the week. And we would just pick words. Okay, we might go to a list that some company had put out, but we just picked words. So my question is, what if we picked words that went with the executive function skills we're wanting to focus on? To increase that independence, to work on that, because again, core words are fabulous. They're fabulous. We want to do that. But if we focus on the core words that you guys just talked about, because we know this student has response inhibition issues, so therefore we are loading them up with the vocabulary they need to increase the response inhibition, we should hopefully see in time an improvement in response inhibition. Maybe it's always going to be weak. We may not be able to fix it, right? Make it where this child has this, typical development of response inhibition, but we're at least giving the opportunity to learn the vocabulary to make that skill increase. Okay, so there's response inhibition. Questions on response inhibition before we go on? Okay. All right, working memory. So working memory is not just remembering things. Working memory is taking something, playing with it, doing something with it, and then using it. So one of the things, does anybody else love those strategy games where it has the chart? I don't even know what they're called. The chart, and it tells you like, this person did this, but this person didn't do this. And you're trying to figure out the chart thing of like who, what was the dog's owner's name and what color, kind of dog, what I'm talking about. Yeah, that is working memory, holding on to that stuff and doing it. So that's a good thing. So the ability to hold information, it develops early in infancy. What this looks like is like when you hide a toy and the kid actually realizes you've hidden it and they go to look for it, they're starting to get that working memory going on. Following directions, as language increases, the ability to use working memory expands because you have the ability to use more words to do those things. So again, if I said to a young child who's 24 months old, I want you to go get your shoes, grab your backpack and your coat, and then tell your brother it's time to go. Yeah, not going to happen, right? They don't have the language to do that. But if I said, I need you to go get your shoes, yeah, I can do that, right? I can hold on to that. If I said, I need you to go get your shoes and your coat because we have a routine, they may be able to do that. So as that language increases, you're going to see the ability for working memory to increase. Following directions, following a schedule, able to keep track of materials. That's what working memory is. So recently I was working on, so I have a school district in Illinois that we did training on executive functioning for the entire district at the beginning of the year. And then the director has a cohort who decided they wanted to learn more about executive functioning skills. So we've been working throughout the year doing some different things. And as I was working on a section on working memory for them, I found this and I was like, oh, that is so, so true. And information not rehearsed leads to decay of that information. And I was like, ooh, decay. That's a great tier 3 word, right? But it's very descriptive. And I think, wow, things that I kind of learn and hear and then I don't really do anything with, I don't remember, right? The password that I set and 2 minutes later I have to remember it, I can't remember it. But my phone number from growing up or my address, I can still remember because I had to do a lot with it. So if we don't give kids the opportunity to practice, there's going to be a decay in what they learn. And so that's one of the things with working memory. All right, when you are using working memory, you're going to do things like mnemonics. How many of you learned a mnemonic in elementary school or junior high that you still remember to this day? How many of you can sing the states in alphabetical order? Anybody? Oh, somebody back here. I'm not going to ask you to do it. But because she learned a song or something or learned a mnemonic, I still remember the order of math things because I learned please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I thought it said please execute my dear Aunt Sally. And then I realized it was excuse later. But I still remember that, right? And I learned that. I remember learning that in 7th grade in Mrs. Miller's math class. I think I was wearing a red shirt. I'm not kidding you. I still remember that because it was a mnemonic and I held on to it. Chunking, how are our phone numbers put together? In chunks, right? When somebody asks me for my phone number, what do? I tell them my area code, 785-331-6441. It's a pattern. Social security numbers, 3, 2, 4, right? The human brain can hold on to 7 things plus, this is Miller's theory, plus or minus 2. That number is actually now 5 plus or minus 2 because we are having issues with working memory because we don't have to. I cannot tell you my sister's phone number and I call her every day, right? Because I just click on her picture. I used to be able to tell you, but information not used leads to decay. Okay, so we do chunking. Know how you learn best. Are you a visual learner? Are you auditory? Are you kinesthetic? Are you a combo? There are people who love audiobooks and learn best from that. I am not that person. I need to read it in paper. I need to highlight it. I need to do something with it. I'm more of a visual learner. Routines. You have a routine of how you do something. When that changes, something isn't in that routine, you're like, ooh, what am I supposed to do? I don't remember how to do this. We teach somebody else. That's a way that we can do working memory. So when we look at working out your working memory in respect to AAC, how does this look different? Does it look different? Anybody? Do we do mnemonics with our kids with AAC devices? Things are in the same spot, right? We have the motor planning. Absolutely. Sorry, I'm pointing at you, but I'm pointing at you. I will tell you, one of the cool things about having a cane is when I go to an elevator with all the germs that are around, I can just do that. Although my husband and I have been watching true crime dramas, and the hotel we're staying at, we saw drops of blood in the, just like drops. And so my husband was like, I think that came off of somebody's left hand. So sorry, because I was like that, and he was like, whoo, okay, sorry, that was totally... You can tell my response inhibition is going down. Okay, so we do things like the motor planning, right? So that kind of goes into that working memory. And it becomes automatic when we do it, just like when we type and use, a keyboard and things. What happens on your phone when you update it and the icons go in different places? Totally throws you off. It's like, whoa, what just happened, right? That's the same thing with our kids with their devices. So what does this look like? I will be honest, I never did mnemonics with kids with AAC devices. Why? I just never thought of it. Did I ever chunk things together for them when we were learning? Not necessarily. Could I? Let's try it, see if it works. So think about how can you do some of those things. When we know how kids learn best, if we know we have a kid who's a visual learner, let's put lights with the communication device, or something, cover pieces on the screen so they're focusing on certain icons as they're looking at it. What is a routine that you can use as you're working with that student so that they get into that routine and they know this is what I do and this is how I do it, and it becomes natural and just part of something they're doing. So here are some environmental supports when using working memory. We see schedules, right? Does this look familiar? You guys probably all have that. That's from lesson picks. So we have schedules, do this, do this, do this, do this. We have social stories, task boxes, first then, visual supports. This is a visual support called Block in Box from Sarah Ward. And the idea is that you block different things. So this is actually my next door neighbor a number of years ago. I said, hey, can I take your picture with your French horn? So she has a backpack on. So here's my technology box. What all technology do I need? Here are my books. What all do I need for my books? Here's my band stuff. What all do I need? And I put that in my box. This is what I did when I was planning for the trip. I was like, these are the clothes I need. This is the technology I need to take with me. This is the food I need to take with me because I'm a diabetic. So I bring, like nuts and cheese and all that kind of stuff with me. Here's my water bottle. Here's other things. Here's miscellaneous things. And I'm going to put that all together in my suitcase, right? You may do that for work. You might go, oh, here's my bag with all this stuff. And here's all the kids' stuff. And here's all this. You categorize it and group it together. So think about how can you teach your students to use AAC devices in that same way so that you're giving that external support of grouping stuff together so they can start internalizing it. Okay, so that you can gradually start pulling it back. And maybe they don't need a para to do it because often what happens is, oh, it's lunchtime. Everyone go get your lunch boxes. And what happens for our student who's in a wheelchair? Who goes and gets the lunchbox? The paraeducator, right? And people will go, well, it's too much. Let's have them do it. Well, they can't. Have we given them a chance? Well, they'll get, not be focused. Okay, well then let's guide our student over there, help them get it, go back to their seat with it, and eventually I can just get to the point where I'm motioning. And then they come back and do it so that they get into that routine. So those are the different things. All right, so here's your work. What are some words that would support working memory? So again, let's go to that Padlet. And now it's just going to be working memory ones that support working memory. Doing good on the people online? Do they have questions at all or? Okay. Oh, good. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. 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 Okay, we have the valiant salamander who has said PEMDAS. Is that parentheses? Is that what you're talking about? Okay, that's fine. First, next, then last. But yeah, okay, who's the valiant salamander that put that? Okay, there you go. So what is your thought process with that? I like that. Can you give me some more information? Yeah, so think about it. If you have a student who's an AAC user, you could teach the word please, excuse, my, dear. I don't know if we're going to put Aunt and Sally on there, but we could do Aunt and something else or come up with something else or come up with other things and teach them those words. Still, are they using them that way? Maybe not. But let's teach it. I love that. That's a great idea. This is why I do this. This is why I do this in a Padlet, to be able to go back. I did this a while ago at I think when I did it at Closing the Gap a couple of years ago, some of the things that people came up with. Okay, peaceful raven. Ginkgo biloba, I'm sorry. Who's my peaceful raven? Yeah, give me more information on that. a supplement that you take for your memory that I obviously need. But yeah, I mean, maybe you're teaching words that are specific to medications or specific to something that they need or something like that. Okay, all done. Where, what, when, why, all done. Remember, review, review. I've never taught the word review on an AAC device. What a great idea. You know, especially as the student gets older, gets into second grade, third grade, we're going to review our spelling list. We're going to review this. Are we using those words with our students? If not, why? Let's include those. Let's talk about those as a team. I had a parent reach out to me recently and they were like, well, what should I use? And this parent had a number of other children in their family. And I said, listen to what your other kids are saying. Write some of those words down. And words that you hear your kids saying over and over again, start teaching those words. Again, there's no developmental right or wrong. You know, maybe, I don't know, is the skibbity toilet a thing here? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, let's put that on a device. Let's put that on a device. Let's give kids the opportunity to do that. Let's get other kids to give us input on some of those things. I mean, that doesn't really go with working memory, but you know, you guys are getting what I'm saying on that. Okay, our last one that we're going to do is emotional control, and we're going to be done about 3:30-ish. So you guys are, my goal was 3 hours, so I think we're going to do good. But then we'll have some time that we can talk about stuff if you want to stay and do that. The lady who checked in already, she can stay. Everyone else can go back to their hotels. Okay, so emotional control. And this is the ability to use emotions, not just have them, but use them and talk about them and express them. And these are things not just anger, but anxiety, frustration, disappointment, all these things. So these are emotional control things that we see in the environment. Do you guys use zones of regulation? Familiar? Yeah. Okay, incredible 5-point scale. Anybody? Yep, familiar? Okay. I figured it was, but I didn't know for sure. Size of the problem, visual schedules, time timers, social thinking. Are any of you familiar with Michelle Garcia Winner's social thinking and Superflex? Yes, somebody's going, woohoo! Yeah, she's fabulous. Yeah, she's fabulous. Has anybody seen her in person? Yeah, she's so good. What'd you say? Oh, she's so good. She is so good. Yeah, she used to have a number of different things on YouTube, like little snippets of her presenting. And they were actually at a presentation that I was at that she had done. And so I was like, oh, I remember her talking about that. And I remember that sweater that she was wearing. It's kind of fun. Everyday speech. Is anybody familiar with everyday speech? Yeah, probably speech paths are. So everyday speech was something I became familiar with during COVID. And after COVID, the speech paths came to me because I was the one who kind of oversaw the, you know, different materials. And they were like, do not get rid of everyday speech. Whatever you do, you can get rid of the boom cards and the this and this. Do not get rid of everyday speech. So if you aren't familiar with everyday speech, I have no affiliation with them. It is a curriculum that works on emotions and basically a lot of different executive functioning. It is a curriculum that is paid, but they have a lot of free videos on YouTube that you can go to. And it is like kids talking about and sharing, you know, using these different things in the classroom. So they're really strong. So those are some different environmental supports that you can do. But look at this. Let's look at that incredible 5-point scale. I am going to explode. I never have taught a child on a communication device the word explode. Has anybody taught the word explode? No, we might do mad. We might do angry, but I never did explode. But here it is on this 5-point scale, right? And that gives so much more. I'm getting angry, sure. I'm getting a little nervous. I don't know that I've taught nervous. I might have used nervous, but I never purposefully taught it. So how do you purposefully teach it? How do you purposefully teach the word nervous? Anybody have any suggestions? Yeah. Model. Yeah. Yeah, modeling it, using it, offering it. You might read books about it. You might go, ooh, you look kind of nervous right now, and put a focus on it again. If you say to the team, hey, we're going to put a focus on the word nervous all this week, so see if you can use it at least 2 times during the day. Silly. You've used silly and then gone backwards? Yeah. Silly is a great word. I love the word silly, and kids love silly words, right? So if you can teach them silly words, that is a great way to do it. Or saying, like you said, oh, you're being silly, or those kinds of things. Silly is a great word. I agree. It's a wonderful word to do. So when we look at emotional control by age, this is, again, neurotypical. Baby needs are typically met immediately. When they're not, they eventually learn to self-soothe, right? So I don't have what I need. Eventually, I learn to self-soothe. Toddler to age 3, they develop rituals and routines. Some can roll with things, some cannot. I had one of each. Overlap in emotional control and flexibility happens, right? And there are times that one of my children, which shall remain nameless, we used to say, you cannot say anything until you get some food. And, you need to get something to eat before we have this conversation, because hangry was a real thing for that person. And so you may see, ooh, this is not a good time to do this with this student. I tell people all the time, set kids up for success, not for failure. If you know that 10 o'clock is not a good time because lunch hasn't happened and breakfast is worn off and that kind of stuff, look at how the day is set up and what does the student need. Elementary, we have weak emotional control, typically shows up as social problems. So kids who have weak emotional control, that's typically social problems, and people who bring jars, or no, I'm kidding. And the strong emotional control kid, they become the strong emotional control child allows them to make compromises, and they become the peacemakers. That was my daughter. And here's a plug for your kids who are peacemakers. They need to be given a break sometimes, and not always be the one to sit next to the kid who needs somebody to help and support them. My daughter would always be the one sitting next to the kid who needed somebody to help them self-regulate, and sometimes she just wanted to sit by her friends. So make sure you spread out the wealth of that. I mean, there is a skill in that. Again, she is now an educator. But look for that. Those kids that have those good skills, pull them into groups with you, have them help be a peer for those kiddos. And then by adolescence in general, they're more susceptible to breakdown. So there's actually information that says that in adolescent, there's a disconnect that happens in the brain, and executive function skills they used to have, they may not have in the same way until they reconnect. I'm seeing heads nod over here. Are you nodding to that? Oh, okay. He was not paying attention. So no, I'm teasing. But so when we have that disconnect happen, that is happening at in the adolescence age. So you may go, man, fifth graders, they used to be able to do this, and now they're in sixth grade or seventh grade and they're not able. And it's because the brain has actually had this disconnect, and then it's going to come together. So what we know is this is all happening in the frontal lobe of the brain. And when does the frontal lobe, we think, fully develop? What age? 25, right? They're saying 18 to 20, but 25 for 30, or for sure. What happens at age 25 for people? What'd you say? You can rent a car. What else? And why can you rent a car now? Because your frontal lobe is developed. What also happens with cars at age 25? Your insurance goes down. And it's because the brain is supposed to be fully developed at that point, so you're making better decisions, which is why you can now rent a car without having to pay lots of extra money, is because you're supposed to have a fully developed frontal cortex that can make those decisions of, do I drive down this green road or not, right? And so that's why those things happen. It's all connected to executive function skills. So that is emotional control by age. So let's look at what are some words related to emotional control that we want to make sure we teach. So especially if you have a student who has difficulty with emotional control, are you being purposeful in selecting words on their device to highlight, to have other people highlight, to focus on, to read books about, to include in your therapy, to write about, that are related to emotional control? Okay, we have help. We have angry, break. Stop, think, breathe. Ooh, I like that. Check in. Yeah, wait. I need a break. 1 minute. Feelings, happy, sad, silly, etc. Yeah, all the feeling words. Big, slow, stop, breathe. 1, 2, 3. Counting, clap hands, calm, angry, want, time. All of these are fabulous. So this is what is a great thing to do with your team is sit down and talk about different executive function skills. Again, going back to that idea of the B's of what is the behavior, what is the executive function skill, and then what are the words or strategies that you want to focus on as a team. And it's going to be different for every kid. You may have one kid who's a blurter that you focus on these words with, and you may have another kid who's a blurter that you focus these words with. So it's really going to depend. You may have one student who you're like, ooh, they've got emotions, but they have these few emotions. We need to really dig in and get a little bit different on emotions. So this is the QR to the full Padlet. So you, and again, this is on the handout. So here is the full Padlet. So if you're like, hey, Paige, I want to go back and look at that later, you can do that. Maybe I can do this. There we go. All these different ideas and words. Oops. So you can go back and see the list that you and your peers came up with and look at those and go, wow, I hadn't even thought about that. When I do this at trainings, okay, yes, dependable salamander, sometimes we have to do these questionable words for emotional control, right? Because sometimes those are the things that we have to go, hey, is this appropriate for the student to have, not appropriate for them to have? Maybe they just have something that says, leave me alone. You know, I had a parent one time say, no, I don't want to put that on there because he's going to tell. And I go, well, why shouldn't the child have the ability to say, leave me alone right now? There are times I want to say to people, I need a break. Leave me alone. Stop. You know, we want to make sure that we do those different kinds of things. So that is going to give you, crashing out. I've had enough. I love these. This is why I do this. You guys have such great ideas. Okay. Squeeze. Okay, so that is the link to the Padlet. And again, it is on the handouts. If you want to look at that later, if you're going, Paige, I'm not going to be able to keep this on my phone, that's fine. It's on the handouts, both on my website and the ones that Austin sent out that are on the SCED. So this link is on there. Okay, so here we're kind of pulling things together. So you have done an executive function checklist. You have done the communication matrix. You've done the planning tool and pulled things together, and you've brainstormed with your team, and you have these ideas of words, and this is what you're going to do, and now what? Okay, so how do we pull this all together? Well, you pull it all together by coming up with a plan, and that is one of the most important things. Are any of you familiar with the CAPS, which is the Comprehensive Autism Planning System by Brenda Smith-Miles? Yeah, she's actually from Lawrence, where I live, so it's pretty fun. She is at the University of Kansas. So Dr. Miles and Dr. Henry, I believe, came up with this, and it is, so this is adapted from it. But what you do with the CAPS is you basically come up with a plan, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the day, and you're going to go, okay, in the morning, what do we have going on? What's the activity? So give me an activity that happens in the morning. Morning circle, okay, morning circle. So we're going to go, okay, time. Activity is morning circle. What is the targeted executive function skill for morning circle? Staying in your seat. So maybe response inhibition. Okay, so response inhibition is going to be my targeted skill for that because we want them to stay in their seat, stay on their square, whatever they're supposed to do. So targeted vocabulary that we're going to model. Let's come up with 5 words. Wait, sit, not yet, eyes, ears, maybe things they're doing in that circle. What? Soon. Okay. Maybe I need a break. You know, maybe the reason I'm struggling is because you're having me sit here for 30 minutes and I can do 3. right? So maybe I need a break. So those kinds of things. So talk as a team. What are the vocabulary we're going to model? Come up with 3, 5 maximum. Okay, 5 maximum. And the reason I think it's important to do this is if you tell people they have to do this all day long, every day, what is going to happen? Failure. Failure, failure, failure. But if you're like, hey, we're going to focus on 8:30, is that a normal start time here? It seemed like I drove by a school at 8 and there weren't many people. So we're going to say 8:30. So from 8:30 to 8:45, it is going to be circle time. We are going to focus on these words. This is, or the skill of response inhibition. This is the vocabulary we're going to model. What do they need? Oh, we need to make sure they have their communication device, or we need to make sure they have their emotions page, or we need to make sure they have the colors, or whatever they do. So we're going to say this is what they need to be successful. And then who are their communication partners? Well, maybe it's the para, maybe it's the students in the class, maybe it's Amanda, maybe it's whatever. Who are those people that we need to target? And then who is, what are the expectations of the communication partner? So the communication partner, I'm sorry, have their visual supports with them. Maybe the expectation of the communication partner is they're going to model. Maybe the expectation of the communication partner is they're going to sit back and maybe not model in this situation. So what are those expectations? Set them up, write them down. And then what are the student expectations in this activity? Well, the student expectation is that they're going to sit and they're going to listen. But is everybody sitting and listening? Again, look at what the other kids are doing. Are the other kids able to chat with their partner or not chat with their partner? What does that look like? And then what is the data that you're going to collect, and talk about it. If you don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. We're going to do 15 minutes in the morning. This is the data we're going to collect. Our next time that we're maybe going to focus on this is maybe at 11:30. So not saying that you're not doing stuff the rest of the day, you're still doing it, but if you try to do it all day long every day, you're going to have failure. So maybe you start with 2 times during the day, we're going to put an executive focus on communication. And then we're going to increase that to 3, and then we're going to increase it to 4. I would also keep a list of what are the words that you focused on, so that when you have somebody go, I don't know where anything is on this device. Do you ever hear that? Yeah. You could go, okay, well, let's look back at the words that we put a focus on. We've learned this word, this word. Do you remember where those words are? Let's look at them on the device. Let's go to the search button. Let's find those. How can you embed those in the day today? Can you embed the word run? I just saw a dog run. Can you embed the word run into the day 5 times today? Oh, great, you can. Wonderful. We have 2 dogs running now. Are we going to have more? So can you embed that in, 5 times today? Great. What times of the day do you think you can embed that in? Oh, you can do that at recess time, and you can do that when you're out on the playground. Okay, great. Other times, at the end of the day when you say don't run to the bus. Great, wonderful. Plan on doing that. Okay, so now we've said here's 5 times during the day. Again, 2 times during the day is what we really want to have for AAC. So how do you build that up so that that is becoming more natural? So when you sit down with the team and do something like this, and it doesn't have to be this exact thing, but sit down with the team, have discussions, planning. One of the really important things is to bring along your paraeducators, the people who are working with the student all the time. Because if you just hand it to them and go, okay, I went to this training and we talked about executive function, AAC, and I want you to start modeling this. What's going to happen? I've had no input in this. I feel not valuable in this. So you want to coach them by saying, hey, we talked about this. And I know that, Billy has been having trouble sitting in thing. And we talked about that. That's really a response inhibition thing. He's not able to inhibit the need to get up and stuff. So what are some words that you think we should focus on with him? And let's write a few of those down. And then they're having input in that. And then they're feeling a valued part of it. It's also getting to that human need of being appreciated, showing worth, and all those kinds of things. So do this as a team. Do it on a Google sheet. It doesn't have to be sitting down and doing it. Maybe you send it out to the team and go, hey, by tomorrow afternoon, could you pop 2 words on here you want to focus on, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So it may be something that you have to do and shared that way. Woo, okay. We are at the end of the day. So yes, we're at the end. We are exhausted, Paige. Okay, what I would like to do Hopefully this one is set up. This is your last Padlet of this session. I have a few in the other sessions. But I would like you to go on a Padlet and answer one of these 3 questions. If you want to answer all 3 of them, you're welcome to do that. So there are 3 questions. What is one thing you learned that you did not know? What is something that you plan to implement from today? And then, do you have any additional questions? Under the additional questions, if you want to put your email, your name and email address, I will respond directly to you. If you do not put it, I will respond on the Padlet, okay? So you'll need to go back to the Padlet to look, but I will go on, if not tonight, tomorrow when I'm in the airport, and I will respond to it. Feel free to email me specifically with, hey, Paige, I want to talk to you more about this. Can I set up a time? My answer is going to be yes, let's do it. Let's set up a time. We'll set up a Zoom, and I will Zoom with you, and we'll talk about it, okay? Because one of the things I would love is I would love feedback from you guys. Did this work? How did it work? How long did it take to work? You know, hey, Paige, this was great. We had a plan for it, and then, man, it just fell apart. And we just saw this, we really struggled with this. Wow, I want to know that. I want to know that information so that I can help problem solve. Well, are there different things we could do? Maybe we're going in the wrong direction with this. So I would love feedback from you guys. So if you could go in and answer this, and I am going to go to that real quick. That's not the Padlet I want. Is it blue or is it, what does the background look like of it? Is it this blue? The mountains? Okay. Okay, let's see if anybody learned anything. Never considered teaching executive function skills. Okay, I know, it made so much sense to me. Is like I said, Gail asked me to do it, and I was like, sure. And then I was like, how am I going to do this? I seriously called one of my coworkers, and I was like, I think I'm going to have to call her and tell her I can't do this. And then it was like this light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah. Okay, so many executive function skills, yeah. So add your email if you want me to respond directly. How do we get, well, you can just contact me. So yeah, Anonymous Stork, reach out to me directly. I'd love to come talk to you. I'd love to come back to Utah. Seriously, my husband and I yesterday were like, we could move out here. When we retired, we could totally move out here. I don't know how our kids would feel about that, but because our son, the one who has decided he's not going to have children, lives around the corner from me. And he texted me the other day because they stopped by our house to pick up some mail, and his dog, when his puppy saw that she was getting close to our house, got really excited. I'm like, that's all I want to know as a fur grandma, that when the dog gets close to my house, she gets excited. So, okay, I know. Not using pairs as executive functioning barriers. Yeah, awesome. Well, I will look at these, and again, I will respond. Go and look at these. Again, it is on the sheet that is on the SCED and is on my website. Again, password is Utah to the resources section of that. You are free to share that with anybody you want. So if you're like, hey, I want to take this back to my team, I want them to look at these resources, share it. The only reason I have it really password protected is honestly because that's what Jane Corsten did, and she's really cool. And so I just was like, I'm going to start doing that too. I was like, Jane, I do that. Just so you know, on her website, it's chocolate is the key word. So anyway, there we go. Follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm not real great, but I do have some videos on YouTube on executive functioning skills. I have some that are short little things that you can do for staff members. So if you're like, hey, you want to learn what executive function skills, and when I say short, I'm talking like 7 minutes or less. Some of them are 3. And then I have some that are specifically developed for younger kids. And actually, I'll tell you this quick thing. So we had talked about AI. So what I did is I put in some ideas and I said, hey, ChatGPT, make a script for me for kids age 5 to 10 to turn into a video, and it gave me a script. I mean, I gave it an outline of what I wanted, but then it did all these words, and then I used AI voices. Some of them are my voices, but then on some other ones, I used AI voices from a company called 11 Labs. Again, no kickbacks from them. And you can pick these voices, so it was great. to do that. So anyway, I do post some stuff on Instagram. I'm not super great about it, but please reach out to me, the person who asked questions. Just email me directly, and I would love to support you guys. Again, if you have questions, email me. I'd love to keep working with you, and I will see you tomorrow morning. Anything that you guys need? I know.
We just want to thank you, and you are amazing, and we are lucky to have you in Utah. So thank you. And I was teasing the ladies I was sitting with because I'm like, I don't think my frontal lobe has developed because I still make poor choices.
All the time. Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yes.
Thank you.
So
Well,
thank you.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you, Julia, for reaching out and everything. And I do want to real quick, because I get off topic on these, because I had said something to Austin. He was like, what? This is my really cool collapsible water bottle. Again, I get no kickbacks on this, but look at this. So if you don't like carrying a big chunky water bottle around, because when it's empty, it's like really heavy, this is awesome. It is working great. So those are my quick tips. Anybody else? I think we're good. So go home or not go home, go check into the hotel.